The Snapdragon Pro Series is brought to you by Snapdragon Elite Gaming, Monster Energy, and DHL.
Won't stop going till a player on top know it. Rooftop, penthouse suite. If you really want it, gotta own it. Fight through it, we was at the lowest. Blood, sweat, tears, the components. Riding all year, now's the moment. We are not friends, we are opponents. Yeah, I'm coming for mine. Yeah, I'm making a play, the game on the line. Yeah, I've been on the grind. Yeah, I jump in the spot, I made it my time. Yeah, look in the sky. Yeah, the stars align, no shade to shine. Can't stop it already. Emotional work and devotion. We put in this time. Look. You won't stop.
And this is what you've been waiting for. You've been involved here in the Snapdragon Pro Series for a long time. Maybe you played in it, maybe you've just been watching, and it all comes down to this. 4 players from Split 1, 4 players from Split 2, but only one golden ticket to Clash Royale League World Finals. Hello and welcome. I'm Rich Slayton. That's Andrew Guy. Andrew, this is going to be a banger. We have 3 of the best players in the game, mixed with some upstart players who might make a good run all the way to World Finals.
That's right. Here we are at the conclusion of the Snapdragon Pro Series in Europe, Middle East, North Africa. Let's take a look here at our format to remind you guys, as Rich said, we had 2 splits. 4 winners from each of those splits. It was 12 weeks of open competition. The winners of those went on to play in Split 1 and Split 2 finals, of course. And of course, the top 4 from either of those splits are here today to get that golden ticket. 10K is on the line. That's exciting. That's great. But everyone wants that golden ticket. And it's going to be the exact same as what you're seeing here on the screen. Single elimination, best of 3. You lose, you go home, you win, you get the glory, you go to World Finals. And like you said, man, this is a great bracket with some of the best players in the world and some really, really great players that showed a lot of, let's say, skill, domination during either of those first 2 splits.
Let's take a look at that bracket here, and you can see it only takes 3 wins to get a golden ticket as you see the setup portion of it, but as we go over to the bracket, you can see there's one side of things that's going to be a whole lot more dangerous because of one specific man. Here we go. Taking a look at that one. On the bottom side of the bracket, we have a banger in our 4th matchup today. Morton against Mohammed Light, the exact sort of thing you want to see on a Saturday. On the other end of it, Viper and Hugo, a battle of the Frenchmen. Those are the 2 big-time matchups, but Entourage, Ozlon, Rosen Noble, and Quentin, a.k.a. Z, all in the mix. Reminder to everyone here, folks, Mohammed Light already has a golden ticket. As we just saw on the Masters Challenge, if he makes the final, well, then he gifts a golden ticket to the other finalists. So if you're on the top half of that bracket, you are hoping that Mohammed Light wins those first 2 and guarantees one of you 4 that trip to Worlds.
That's right, Mohammed Light going for his 3rd golden ticket on the season. Of course, the second one he got went over to Mugi. The 3rd one, maybe, well, if he gets it today, will go to the person that ends up in 2nd place. And of course, we do have a prize pool, and that's going to be $4,000 to the winner, $2,000 to 2nd place. 3rd and 4th will get 1K each, and then 5th through 8th will each get $500 apiece. So no matter what, you are going to get a little bit of money today. But Rich, does anyone really care about the money at this point? Yes, it's nice to get a few $1,000s, but it's only about World Finals, right? It's getting closer and closer to our $1 million World Finals, and opportunities are going to be coming less regularly. And one of these guys in Morton and another one of these guys in Viper, it feels like they both should be there, but will they be there?
Yeah, that's the really big question here. Viper came oh so close in the Masters Challenge, was in the winner's bracket, but he had a problem. The last other 3 guys there at the end were, other 2 guys were Mugi and Mohammed Light. So he lost to Mugi in the winner's bracket, dropped down against Mohammed Light in the lower bracket. And you saw that when it got to that those final couple of matches, that maybe the pressure got to Viper a little bit. Would love to reset here. And he has the easiest path. Not saying the guys he would go up against are bad players. They're great players. but he does not have to face Morton or Mo before getting to that golden ticket final. So he has a really solid path here. Morton, though, you talked about that. How can you have a World Finals without Morton in the mix? So definitely that's one of those guys you want to see there.
Yeah, and so, you know, when you talk about Mohammed Light, and heavy lies the crown usually, but it might be today, it's easy to be king, right? There's nothing to lose. There's nothing to gain for him other than a few thousand more dollars. He doesn't have to worry about the pressure. He doesn't have to worry about making it to the golden ticket finals. He literally gets to sit back and play the game that he loves, and he has been playing it oh so well. Let's take a look at our open finals split 1 bracket here. The winner was Viper, but second place was Rosen Noble, who took down some incredible players along the way. You see right there, Legolas, Hugo, Morton, they all fell to Rosen, but Rich, it was all about the Frenchman, Viper.
Yeah, I mean, Viper was on fire in this one, took home a pretty big bag in this first split bracket, but of course, getting that first seed was a big part of that as well. And then you go on to the other bracket here, the second one, and man, you know, you talked about the idea of heavy lies the crown. Well, I mean, in this case, it's a Burger King crown because that thing is light as heck on the head of Mohammed Light. He won our second split. He went and won the Masters Challenge. It really today is the question is, can anyone stop Mohammed Light from winning all the things? As you can see there, taking out Ozlon, taking out Hugo, taking out Vitor. Just yet another nice run for him. So you have our two finalists, our two champions from the first two splits in Viper and Mohammed Light. And then some other players. You know, you talked about the second place finisher there in split number 2, Ozlon. We've mentioned it before.
Yeah.
One of the top players out of Turkey. He's been around and been just on the edge of that like really being a danger, really being one of those guys you have to watch out for, just right there on the razor's edge for a very long time. A big performance today could be the tipping point.
Yeah, you saw right there, he 2-0'd Viper, our split 1 champion. He eliminated him from the competition right off the bat. But then when he got to the finals, when he got to playing Mo, you don't know if it's pressure, you don't know if it's nerves, you don't know if it's just playing against the best guy in the world. It's really hard to pick up a game off of him, which only happened twice in our last split. Mohammed Light only dropped 2 games, obviously 0 sets because it is single elimination. But that's what Mo does, and he did it with style. He did it with all different types of decks. We saw Mirror, we saw Lava, we saw Eject, we saw everything that you'd want to see out of Mohammed Light, and that's the scariest thing because you're trying to figure out, how do I game against him? Well, I honestly think you got to stop worrying about the Pharaoh. You got to stop worrying about the Prince of Egypt. You need to just think about your game, your best of 3, your duels format, and what you need to bring to the table. Yes, starting with your comfort deck is great, but is it predictable? Or if you don't start with your comfort deck and you drop game number 1, have you already shot yourself in the foot? So there's a lot of mind games that go on here, especially when it comes to single elim.
Yeah, and we'll, of course, get deeper into Mohammed Light when he faces off against SK Gaming's Morton, one of the most popular, long-standing players in the game. On the front end of it, though, of course, we're going to start with Viper. We'll talk about that one in just a little bit. But, of course, big thank you to Snapdragon. Snapdragon Elite Gaming. When you think gaming, of course, think Snapdragon. Thank you so much for putting this on. We've had some great competitions both in the Europe, Middle East, North Africa region, and, of course, North America region as well. So it's great to have a wonderful partner here for Clash Royale.
Yeah, it's really great to get the support there. Obviously putting up that prize purse, letting us be here in this awesome spaceship. Big fan of this. And of course, the golden ticket, right? North America, it was really exciting to see the 2 players in Arden and Diego pick up some wins, pick up some momentum in their CRL careers. But here in Europe, Middle East, North Africa, we are giving away a golden ticket. We have given away a bunch of money already. We're going to give away $10,000 more today. And I don't know who's going to take it, right? We know that Mo can't take it. He has been the most dominant player here. But when you look at Viper, for instance, when you're talking about him in the Masters Challenge, Rich, coming in 3rd place, that's really, really impressive. He didn't get to the top, but it was Mugi and Mo. But then when you looked at what he did in split number 2, it felt like he'd kind of lost his rhythm a little bit, maybe lost his mojo. And I really do believe that in these moments, this is when you get to separate the great from the legendary, right? You need to be able to perform when the pressure is up and something like your life is on the line. You don't know how many more golden ticket opportunities you're going to get, so you got to pick it up today.
Yeah, we're getting low on the golden ticket opportunities. Of course, only 3 of our 16 world finalists decided. 4 after today. That'll leave 12 more spots, and of course, a few through golden tickets, and then the big, not yet announced precisely, so we don't know what it's going to look like, the big summer series, whatever it's going to be to lead up to fill out the rest of those golden ticket or rest of those Clash Royale League World Finals spots. But you want to lock one up early. We don't know. I think that's probably the biggest question here, Andrew, is those remaining spots once we're done with the golden ticket portion. We don't know exactly how those are going to shake out, how they're going to be, how you're going to earn those. They just, of course, announced the new update the other day, where there's a version of dual mode coming into the game. That could be a big game changer. It's going to be fascinating. Speaking of fascinating, let's kick things off with a battle for the best in France. Hugo top of your screen, Viper at the bottom. Best of 3, let's go.
You and I have talked so much about duels format and them adding in a challenge with duels format. It'll be fun to see how our our commentary might actually go into play, because we're always like, oh, well, you should do this if this is banned, and this is the obvious pick. We'll see if we can actually put our words to the actual gameplay when that format comes in.
Here we go. Log with the Archer Queen to the left-hand side. AQ will not get the connection. And after a first minute away, just a little chip in both directions. Looking like Hog EQ for Viper. And Hugo running drill wall breakers. And that Inferno Tower will be a nice little piece to have in here, both to back up the drill and, of course, to deal with this giant skeleton with his brand new picture.
Yeah, I really like the two starts of the decks we're seeing here. Hugo not going to Mortar, but still going for some sort of control. Good quick cycle there. Drill is really strong in the current meta. And then, of course, anytime Viper plays Hog, you're always excited to see it. Hog Exinado not as strong right now as this specific deck. The giant skeleton is so great to have up front. You can stop things. If you need a big tank up at the bridge, and of course, if there's any kind of beat-down push, the giant skeleton you can drop there, and there's still a lot of great defensive capabilities when you couple that Tesla with the AQ.
And nice job just whittling that Hog Rider down before he gets anywhere near to the tower. Entering double elixir time, and not really an advantage either direction. Not at least one to speak of so far, Andrew. You know, you mentioned the question of how will all the strategies shake out. I'm very curious to see, you know, we've seen the non-pre-submitted decks come into competitive play partway through last year's CRL campaign. Very curious to see if they keep that for the later stages of tournaments like this one, but then use the new in-game duel mode to make a, let's call it like a more relevant system of qualifiers for our overall competitions.
And you see right there a big time spend coming out from Hugo to just avoid any of that Hog Rider damage. Still basically even. And the responses that Viper has, he's got so many. He can mix it up. He can go guards. He can go Fire Spirit plus Log. He can drop an AQ and then a Fire Spirit. So many good options, but you can see Hugo starting to hit these wall breakers in the back to try to create different levels of pressure.
This is going to be the annoying part, I think, for Viper. Obviously, Tesla's going to be really nice here, but you're spending 4 to defend 2, so you hope you get extra value out of that Tesla every time. The drill, obviously, is very, very annoying, but he has good answers for it. If there's going to be a way that creates problems, I think the wall breakers are going to be the bigger issue over time.
Yeah, and you know, about Viper trying to create offense, where does he do it? He's got a good push coming here on the left-hand side. Maybe he goes Hog Rider to the right. The biggest thing here is that he can't Earthquake cycle, right? I even saw Lucas tweet about it again the other day. I don't know if he was joking or not, but he was saying that Earthquake should do maybe just like 3% more damage to towers. And I don't know if I agree or disagree there. Obviously, when Earthquake cycle was the only thing in the meta, it was incredibly frustrating. But when you do watch Earthquake in competitive now, it doesn't feel like you can spell cycle with it, whereas you can with almost every other big spell.
And it's a big question of whether that should be the methodology, right? Should Earthquake spell cycle be the method that be your win condition? And that's a question, that's almost like a philosophical question for Clash Royale. How viable should spell cycle be specifically, as opposed to winning the game on the field? And there are a lot of players who feel very strongly about that.
Yeah, I mean, and I, you know, for a long time, spell cycle, it can be really frustrating to play against, but then, you know, when you start to play different decks and you realize there's not really a way to break through the Inferno, plus the Log, plus the Valkyrie, how do I actually get damage on tower? Sometimes spell cycle is the only way to do it. But yeah, we'll see what's going on here with 1792, and now that tower ticking down to 1686. So Viper's still happy to Earthquake cycle, even with the lower damage.
That was a really, really nice hog, and it might get a hit, and it does.
Yeah,
The
that's
hog on the
huge.
inside distracts, and it was the timing there to know that he was kind of getting body blocked and just not let through there on the outside in the hog spot. Goes to the inside and gets what might be the winning hog shot here as we go into our final 7 seconds.
And you love that he goes Hog Rider right there because it makes Hugo have to drop something expensive like that Inferno Tower. Log's going to come in. Fireball doesn't get there in time. And one of the best in the world with Hog Rider does it in style. 313 remaining on that tower. And yeah, man, when you talk about interactions, obviously I saw the video that you posted. I think you made a YouTube short on it. Of Mohammed Light's Hog Rider going from the top right of the screen all the way to the bottom left. But then when you talk about this being incredibly important in the competitive moment, that was a really nice Hog Rider to the inside. Gets on top of the tower, gets that hit. It had been a while since he got that Hog Rider hit in. So Viper does it with his favorite card.
Yeah, I don't know if we have replay available. If we can take a look at that moment with the Hog Rider going through, that would be phenomenal because that was the key moment there, right? You were talking about how Spell Cycle was going to be difficult to get the win with.
Yeah.
And that Hog sneaking through, getting that little shot, also kind of making things more difficult for Hugo in the bridge battle as well, slowing things down, giving the Tesla time to work. And here we go. Let's look at this replay. So the Tesla's a little bit alive here. This is actually much earlier. This is very early in the match as a Earthquake gets on the tower. Hog sneaks through on the left-hand side, and this was a lot of the story of the match, right? Things getting shut down. Yeah. Hog not getting there, Inferno Tower doing its job. Hugo was playing really solid defense, and that's the thing about a matchup like this one, and I believe this is that end, right? So the Tesla's there, the Archer Queen goes to the outside, and he's gonna this is actually after that Hog had already hit. So we didn't get that Hog Rider shot that snuck on through. But you see the difference there. Well, that got made up by that one really, really nice play. So you were talking about the Earthquake cycle not really being viable. He needed to get the hog shot in, got the hog shot in, and takes game number 1.
And it was a tough place for Hugo to be in because you saw him overspending quite a bit in single elixir because he knew that's when it was the most likely time that he would take hog hits, and that's when you really don't want to take them. Early on, that Hog Rider deck you can see gets around in 9, just like his can get bound in 9, even though it's a 3.3 to 3.5 cycle. But it did feel like Hugo was really doing a great job overspending to make sure those hog hits didn't come in early. He still took a couple though, and then obviously that little cherry on top, nail in the coffin, whatever you want to call it, with that last hog hit made it so the spell cycle game wasn't there for Hugo. He did have to overspend one more time defensively. He sent in wall breakers after he dropped the Inferno to create a little bit of pressure, and he wasn't able to get the Fireball in. I don't think it would have mattered because it was 313 remaining. Fireball plus Log still wouldn't have done it. So again, just a great job by Viper, controlling the pace, controlling the game, and maybe just getting a little bit of, it's hard to call it luck when it's him doing it with the Hog.
Yeah, no, certainly not luck. I mean, you saw the difference in placement, right? Just that little shift going from the outside traditional hog spot and going to the inside, knowing the Inferno Tower wasn't available, kind of catching Hugo flat-footed with no true counters, right? He didn't have enough to DPS it down, didn't have either of his 2 buildings to stop the Hog Rider from hitting. So, yeah, I definitely wouldn't call it luck from his side. And now, you know, we kind of start doing the math on this one, right? Viper is now 5 wins away from a golden ticket. And that's the crazy thing about today's tournament, Andrew, is that you only have to win 6 total games to get your trip to CRL World Finals.
Yeah, you know, all that work came in the qualifiers, in the original first couple splits. Being in that top 4 was really, really tough. You know, you looked at all the guys that we lost along the way, like Faust, like Schwatzen. You know, Morton didn't make it in the second one. Capgun, Doom, all these guys whose names you've seen for a while, they are not here today because they couldn't get in that top 4. Rosen Noble, I'm really curious to see how they show up later on in this bracket because they were incredibly impressive in split number 1. They were the person that dethroned the German in Morton. So right now, Viper doing exactly what we expected from what we saw in him in split 1, and he's bounced back from a rough split number 2.
Yeah, bounce back certainly. And, you know, I think he you know, it's one of those things, right, where you think about a player. You know, I commentated for mixed martial arts for a long time. The question is Viper going to be an elite champion, or is he going to be a Donald Cerrone? Is he going to be a guy who can beat everybody soundly, who's good? He can beat all the good pros, but who can't beat the great pros when it's time to show up? So that's going to be a big question today that we might get the chance to answer.
Yeah, it's tough. You know, the Charles Barkley, John Stockton, Steve Nashes of the world, their greatest some of the greatest players of all time, definite Hall of Famers, but they never got that ring. And it doesn't mean that your career isn't a success, but you know how competitive these guys are. You know every single one of them wants to win World Finals. But unfortunately, whereas we used to have teams doing it, it's only one person a year. So that makes it an incredibly steep hill to climb. And Viper has what it takes, but does he have what it takes, plus the mentality, plus the luck that you need, right?
So looks like fireball bait out of Viper, and Hugo, more likely than not, Royal Giant? This is an interesting variation. Mother Witch has been mostly in Royal Giant decks, but now seeing Mother Witch, Golden Knight, Inferno Dragon.
Yeah, Mother Witch is back. Very much back in the meta, and she's very, very strong.
Wonder if that's going to be one elixir extra spent there on Viper's side. Not sure if he was hoping it would escape, and there you go, pigs to the left-hand lane. Mother Witch in reply, and the cage does get down. Going to be some damage coming through as the fireball comes down, and that's going to open up a nice lead early on here for Viper.
And Viper needs to spend something on that right-hand side, and there it is. Hugo does get the dash in. Golden Knight comes down late. It was kind of both of them playing a game of chicken, wondering if they were going to drop a 1 elixir or a cheap card to bait out the dash. Hugo holds on it for as long as he can. He gets the late dash in, a really, really nice play there, and then in turn, Viper gets a response dash. So Electro Giant coming out for Hugo, and Viper is currently in the lead by a good margin.
E-Giant with Mother Witch. That's a fascinating combination. You know, we're not seeing the E-Giant Rocket Mirror cycle deck that's been going around so much lately, and honestly,
man.
Oh boy, yeah. That's a very, very nice connection.
Yeah, really great dash there. That's the trouble with the Royal Recruits, right? There's so many of them. If they get caught up in traffic at all, they can create a really, really nice pathway to the tower.
Well, I think this is going to be really nice for Viper as we go on, right? He has the fireball to contend with the Mother Witch. He's going to sit on that for the Mother Witch a lot of the time. Plus arrows now to get a little more chip damage as well. But then you mix in the Goblin Cage with the Royal Recruits, plus the Zappies. Even with that Tornado, it's going to be really hard for Hugo to get Electro Giants on tower.
Yeah, and that's obviously the way to win this matchup, right? The E-Giant needs to get on tower usually just one time, and you're already in a world of hurt. The only other opportunity would be a great NATO coupled with that Golden Knight dash, but you see here Viper cycling those Royal Recruits early. Golden Knight comes down late, doesn't have to worry about it now, and then probably a high Goblin Cage here to the left-hand side. There it is.
Yeah, I think that if we're going to see Hugo get on tower, I think you nailed it. So the second Electro Giant comes down. This is a slightly slow cycling deck here, but if the Golden Knight can escape and get on this stuff to the left-hand or to the right-hand side, and it can't, I think you hit the nail on the head there, Andrew, that Golden Knight is going to be how Hugo gets damage, gets up in this matchup, not the Electro Giant.
Yeah, it's so tough. The fireball there makes that Mother Witch a lot less viable. And then that Golden Knight dash, you guys saw how great it worked there with the Inferno Dragon, locked onto the Golden Knight, gets the late dash in, Zappies do their work, and now an Inferno almost sneaks on tower, taken for that Electro Giant.
And Viper now does have to contend with 2 Mother Witches. Arrows plus Golden Knight takes care of business. Zappies on the left-hand side. This is just shut down. I cannot imagine Viper losing here in the final 35.
And it's just got to be so frustrating for Hugo, right? He's trying to put any sort of offense together. He can't do it. He has the defense that he needs to obviously stop the big-time breakthrough. But the Royal Recruits with that Goblin Cage late and, of course, the Golden Knight to boot. Really nice stuff. And even right there, wow, Golden Knight does get on tower late with the NATO and the high cage. 1258 and a big spell is in Hugo's hand, but it won't be enough.
Unless he's got a rocket, but no, not anymore. Not the fireball, arrows in. And there you go. It is the Lightning. Hugo shows it at the end. GG, well played. Viper taking our first match of the day with an easy, clean 2-0, and now just 2 or 4. Keep that in mind. He might only have to get 2 more wins for a trip to Worlds.
I really liked what we saw there out of Viper in that set. It was a really, really great game for him. You know, you look at what he ran in game 1, you saw what his opponent ran, obviously. Valkyrie's out, Bomber's out, Fireball's out. Log is out. Every single one of these great hog responses not available. So Viper goes Fireball bait, and it pays off perfectly. Plus the aggressive fireballs that he had offensively, right? To create space on that Mother Witch, whether it was on the tower or up high at the bridge, so his flying machine could get a shot in. I loved the Viper that we saw today, Rich.
And it just, you look at this matchup, and it's a weird one here out of Hugo as far as the Electro Giant decks. And in this matchup in particular, you see why that Lightning didn't come out. There's Pigs, there's Royal Recruits, there's Zappies. You even go, hey, maybe you can use it to break through against the cage, but the value you're going to get on that Lightning is always so low, plus how much you have to spend to create a push on the right-hand side and open up opportunities on the left. So for Viper to push the opposite direction. So this was a nasty one for Hugo. Viper doing a great job, and of course, I believe that Viper is working with Jeebus in this one as well. I don't know if he sat this one out or if he was working on this matchup for Viper. Either way, great call in the deck selection, and Viper moving on to our semifinals.
That's right. He'll play the winner of our next matchup between Entourage and Ozlon. And for Viper, coming out with Hog Rider, a really, really strong hog deck in the meta. You love to see him play it. We saw some great gameplay with the hog. We were really harping on that inside placement, and it's what you want to see. It builds that confidence. Then you go to game number 2, and he just really abuses what's available in his opponent's spells. You talked about that Lightning. That Lightning is absolutely useless in that matchup. It was all about just controlling the Mother Witch and making sure that Golden Knight did not connect to tower. Let's take a look here at our bracket for a quick refresher. For you guys at home, we can see the other 3 matches coming your way before we get into our semifinals. It's going to be a great one. Entourage and Ozlon. Entourage, definitely one of the lesser known players here in this entire tournament, but still really showed up and had some great stuff.
Yeah, I mean, Entourage certainly put together a nice performance. 8K player out of France, and we talked about that, how there were multiple French players in this top 8 finale. Now we're down. We've lost one of them with Hugo being knocked out early. Entourage still in the mix, and he's overall started to put together a nice little run here in 2022. Certainly very active, and of course was beginning that activity back in 2021 with a lot of pushing into the solo competitions. It's also interesting. You still see some team play for the young Frenchman, but it's 2022. It is all about what you can do all by your lonesome.
Yeah, Entourage took out OP Sam, took out Michifu, and then fell to Viper to end up in that 3rd and 4th place spot. So when you talk about who he ran into on his pathway to the filler tournament today, great players, right? It was cool to see Sam back, but he didn't last very long. Michifu has been showing up a lot in competitions this year in in 2022, but hasn't been able to get to that very top tier. Entourage was one of the reasons why along the way. And then Ozlon in our second split, really, really great stuff. But when it came to the finals against Mo, it felt like he kind of self-destructed, Rich. And I don't even really think it was because he didn't play well. It just felt like Mo played beyond perfectly, and plus the matchups, like there was everything went in Mo's favor in those finals.
Well, that's, again, we're talking about Ozlon as a player who's, if you follow competitive Clash Royale, he's been in there for a long time. Let's take a look at some of Ozlon's journey here overall. When you talk about him, he's been around for a very long time, but he's been just on the outskirts, right? You could say that Ozlon has flirted with he's been in and out of maybe being a top 100, even top 50 player at times, but he's never been a guy where you're in the top 20, top 30 conversation with any sort of regularity, right? So when you're talking about a game that has millions upon millions of players out there, right? Being up there at that echelon is phenomenal. You're in the 1% of the 1% of the 1%, but we're talking about that extra little sliver. The question is, can he get that big thing that would kind of make all the work he's done for so many years? Can he get that piece, that trip to World Finals that would be the cherry on top?
Let's take a look at some highlights here from one of the best Turkish players in the world. Cleaning up whatever bait cards that were used. And this is actually a pretty good hit here. You see the Mother Witch coming in high, but one bat is on tower. And that giant skeleton is really starting to get real close to anything.
there you have it. A nice road here for Ozlon, who is really looking, you talk about Clash Royale scenes, Andrew, that have a rabid following. Turkey is one of those ones where the fans are so into the game. If you stream Clash Royale competitively ever, you know what I'm talking about. COK is not playing today, folks. He's not here. But you have a Turkish player, you have Ozlon, and you have to know that the fans in Turkey are watching this very carefully because ever since the WCG finals, where FMGG fell to GCJ, they have been waiting for someone to really carry the flag into the upper echelons again, and they're hoping this is their guy.
Yeah, and really what Ozlon needs to get to that next level, he's really close. He's got the mentality of a champion. I love watching him play when he wins or when he loses. He's incredibly composed on both sides of that. You never see an over-celebration, and you don't really ever see him get too upset with himself. He usually just recalculates, figures out what he did wrong, thinks about his next deck choice, and then moves forward. Now it's all about putting that together with the nerves, right? When you get to that top spot, when you get to the grand finals, when the golden ticket's on the line, can you do it then? And it's going to be a little different today if one of the players in the golden finals is Mohammed Light, because you only have to land in second place. So if you end up going against him in the grand finals, if you end up making it through our semis and you know that's your matchup, you already go, wow, I've got a golden ticket. So we're going to take a look here at our head-to-head between Ozlon and Entourage. Entourage is probably the lesser known player of the two here. You see he does have a higher ladder finish at 181 as opposed to Ozlon at 40. 8,000 trophies. It's crazy to say it's not that impressive anymore at the highest level.
That, and we've taken some flack for that occasionally. People were like, 8,000 trophies, 8K. Look, the majority of people who ever pick up Clash Royale can play $10,000 and they wouldn't sniff the idea of 8,000 trophies.
Like us.
Yeah, like us. Never gonna happen, right? But you start talking about these upper tiers where you're playing against players who are hitting 8.8, 8.9, pushing just right up against 9,000 trophies. That's a cavernous distance. That is an insane distance and a difference. And talking about insane, Entourage, Pump, Heal Spirit. Is this gonna be?
It's gotta be 3M.
3M, yeah. I'm like, what in the world? Well, you talk about being predictable, being unpredictable. Entourage here, man, I'm very, very curious about this.
I actually do believe 3M is viable right now in ladder, in competitive. It's just really, really tough because a lot of people haven't practiced it for so long. Meanwhile, all these other win conditions have had their moment in the sun in the last couple years, whereas 3M has basically been non-existent. So while I actually don't hate the deck choice, it's all about how much has Entourage really practiced with it? How well does he know all of these matchups? And right now, Royal Giant is firmly in the meta, top of grand challenges, top of ladder for a reason.
Well, I've only seen, I just checked his battle log, and there's what makes this deck, so there's two things that make this deck annoying. The biggest one is that you can pump Golden Knight and then mirror the pump. That really is what makes this deck super duper obnoxious, and we'll see how Ozlon can contend with that. I only see 4 games played in the last week with this deck out of Entourage. Doesn't mean he didn't grind it a bunch when it was super popular a few weeks ago, or about maybe a couple of months ago. But still, this is a really fascinating choice out of the Frenchman.
And you see right there, big time connection on that left-hand side. Mother Witch comes down, does get the log on the board to take care of that Heal Spirit. If that did not come in, that would have actually been pretty devastating on the tower. One of those E-Barbs would have connected. And now a response here from Ozlon, who is a very good Royal Giant player.
And RG will get a few shots here, but these E-Barbs that are going to come behind it are going to be really, really annoying to deal with. Dark Prince down, Mother Witch behind. Log
nice
not available
there.
to help here. Yeah, wow. Absolutely.
And there's, I love that. The log comes down on the left-hand side. Entourage recognized how Ozlon defended last time, then goes mirror E-Barb's opposite lane, saves the Heal Spirit, and creates a ton of pressure. But still, the lead is in favor of Ozlon playing the more popular deck.
The longer this goes, the more the pumps stop being a huge factor in this game, right? You get down to that final minute, and we're starting to be able to not take advantage of that mirror pump play. I don't think we're going to see that again out of Entourage. So now it's just going to be how well can you fight this thing in the middle, and those muskies on the right-hand side, they're not a factor right now.
Yeah, you can't win this matchup without using, I guess, maybe the pump to put the Royal Giant at bay. That's the biggest problem when you look at Entourage's deck. He has absolutely no way to slow, stun, reset a Royal Giant. He can literally only DPS it down or use the Elixir Pump. So it's a really tough spot to be in it. And as this game goes on, man, yeah, he's going to be, not only is he going to be searching for answers, I think he's going to be searching for a dub because it's going to fall heavily in the favor of Ozlon.
I'm wondering if we see any more Royal Giants at all out of Ozlon here in the last 75 seconds. He has the lead, and he knows he's playing against a deck that has no spell power.
Exactly.
Back, defend cleanly, and throw a couple logs and fireballs. I'd be shocked to see another Royal Giant here unless Entourage disconnects.
And this is exactly what we were just talking about in the pre-match, right? The composure of Ozlon. He's recognizing the macro here. He's not getting ahead of himself. He's not going, oh man, there's no way for him to stop me. I can get a Royal Giant on tower, no problem. He goes, this game is already won. The only thing I can do now is lose this game by playing incorrectly. 7:33 to 13:42, 40 seconds remain, and there's honestly, oh my goodness. And that's exactly what we're talking about, right?
That was crazy. Now, he sees that the E-Barbs are out of cycle. He sees that Mirror is out of cycle, 30 seconds left. If he does Royal Giant, it's going to try to come. Here we go, second round of E-Barbs around, does get the log down. And again, he might just stack up this, clog this lane. Does the Golden Knight get the tower?
He did it again!
Oh my word, oh my word. Royal Giant down, 15 seconds left. Can the RG hit? Log behind,
yes,
RG gets one,
it.
RG gets two. GG, well played. What a, dare I say it, slobber knocker here in game number 1.
Oh, what a blast that match was. It's like the curse of the caster working perfectly in our favor. There's no way he can lose this. He just needs to play defense, and then you get those 2 Golden Knight connections to make this one a barn burner, a slobber knocker. Call it what you want. We are going to game number 2, but that was a beautiful start to this set. And I can't even fault him for using the 3M. It was just a really tough matchup when you talk about not being able to stop the Royal Giant. Ozlon recognized he had 26 seconds remaining, down to 20 seconds remaining, and then he just has to drop the last Royal Giant with a little support behind. Piggies will get on tower. RG's so hard to stop, and this was just a fun game number 1.
It's just an annoying deck to control out of Entourage, right? Like, it's one of those things where, you know, we talk about what makes certain players great, and we'll talk about, I had some conversation about Mo later, but what makes that difference is mistake-free Clash Royale. And Entourage is playing a deck that punishes simple mistakes. You miscalculate on one bit of elixir counting, you play one thing out of sequence, you play one thing too low and line up a Golden Knight. This is a deck that punishes mistakes. And Ozlon here didn't make 0 mistakes, but he didn't make any fatal mistakes either. And that's what kept him in this game and got the win.
Yeah, it's tough when you're playing defense so heavily on that left-hand side. The way that the units stack up, the defensive units that stack up are the Mother Witch and the Fisherman, and of course the Dark Prince. But the Mother Witch plus the Fisherman, they play from pretty far back. You get those piggies spawning, and you all of a sudden have this really great path. But again, when you talk about matchup, only 2 Royal Giants had to come down for devastating blows both times. One early on, one at the end, and then like you called it, just log and fireball anytime that you get that 3M value. And the 3M value was definitely there because where are you going to play him? You saw him play him, you know, relatively up high in front of the King Tower, still within log fireball range on those level 13 Musketeers. You obviously don't want to play them behind the King Tower because that's just a no-brainer fireball. So really, really great spell management by Ozlon as well.
Well, it got curious there at the end. You know, he wasn't going to need to play a Royal Giant until his Golden Knights came in. Yeah. But the hard part here with that defense is that you want to play the Golden Knight up high, or you want to play the Dark Prince up high to stop the Golden Knight outside of dash range. But if you play that Dark Prince up too high, E-Barbs come on top of it, shred, and start running through to create some real problems. So tough spot there for Ozlon, plays through. Now we go to game 2, and this is interesting. Obviously, that Royal Giant deck using Mother Witch not super popular elsewhere, but that 3M Pump deck, there are so many cards in that deck, 3M, Pump, Mirror, E-Barbs, that you're really not worried about being in the rest of the deck pool, so it does make Ozlon's decision-making a bit more difficult going into game 2 and game 3.
So Ozlon looking like he's going to go with maybe Drill, or definitely going to have probably NATO in here with that Magic Archer. I mean, this does look like the drill deck that was really popular for a while. The Electro Wizard has shown up in some. It's been replaced with other cards. But this deck is very, very strong. And now I believe it'll be Ozlon who doesn't have the big spell here in game number 2 going up against what looks like Electro Giant.
Yeah, this will be curious here because also, other than the drill, which he has to use as a building here, he doesn't have a building per se, right? He just has the drill, which you need to use that to control the Electro Giant a lot of the times, unless you can stack up and DPS it down, which then means it's going to be hard for you to get damage. I think the big key here for Ozlon is to find opportunistic moments to get Magic Archer damage against a Electro Giant, and I'm very curious to see if he does the cheeky maneuver where when an Electro Giant comes in behind Princess Tower, where he plays the drill to the opposite side in front of it so that he stalls the Electro Giant out, but then lines it up for a nice, clean Magic Archer shot.
Yeah, it'll be really curious to see how aggressive Ozlon gets, because the other thing about this is now when you look at Entourage's offense, he's going to really want to save. And I was going to say he's going to want to save and start Electro Giants in the back so he can get all the combination that he needs. He needs to be able to have that NATO. He needs to be able to have the big spell. He needs to be able to have the bomber. It's one of those decks that you're playing against where, yes, there isn't a great defensive building, but between the Electro Wizard, between the Golden Knight or Cannon Cart damage, and the NATO, those E-Giants are pretty hard to get on tower. But if you start to NATO everything together, pull it into that E-Giant, that's when things get dangerous. And then when you get 2 of them down as well.
Yeah, 2 down, Bomber working on that Magic Archer. 1 E-Giant getting through and does get some significant tower damage here. This is looking really, really bad for Ozlon in these final moments of the standard time. And yeah, that's it. That's GG.
And you can see Ozlon not even responding because he knew exactly what we were talking about there. If Entourage does the correct thing, plays patiently, doesn't take too much damage in single, which he basically took 0 damage in single, he just needs to build one big push with all of his accoutrement at the avail, right? All he needed was that high bomber to take care of that great drill and Magic Archer by Ozlon. The bomber was on top of those, and then that drill not picking up the first Electro Giant mean that he had to spend that Golden Knight down low. It was just all downhill from there, man.
Yeah, that's interesting. You know, I'm curious about how much Ozlon plays this specific matchup. There were 2 things there that I thought were rough on his part. Number 1, you can see him shaking his head. 2 Magic Archers right up at the bridge in the middle in a place where you can spend 2 Elixir and easily get them off with the Bomber. I don't really know about the Magic Archer going to try to stop the... I don't know why he put the Magic Archer on the Goblin Cage in that first sequence. And then the drill behind Princess Tower that pulled the Goblin Giant back. Maybe he was trying to look to line up a Golden Knight connection, but all you're really doing in that case is getting 0 damage or just the pop damage from the drill, and you're pulling the Electro Giant back so that Entourage has more opportunity to build up a bigger push behind that Electro Giant. And we saw that turn into a double Electro Giant in the end. So, you know, the Magic Archers are a little bit off. The drill going behind Princess Tower, a little bit rough here. Ozlon just has to shake this off and get ready for game number 3.
Yeah, when you look at like the cards that were available for Ozlon, not using the NATO at all because that Magic Archer was placed in a really inopportune spot, that's where you're going to get the most value, is pulling that Electro Giant back and having a Magic Archer in a spot where you can get damage on all those units. Then you can throw in the Bar Barrel, then you can get the connection with the Golden Knight, then the Cannon Cart becomes more effective. All of those things, he just really wasn't able to use his defensive cards the way that he had to win that game. So, you know, 2 pretty interesting matchups so far as we go through game number 1 and game number 2. And then when you look at what's available and what's remaining, you know, Entourage has been playing a very interesting 16 cards that leave a lot of the best stuff in the meta still available.
And log for Entourage, Miner right to the back here, and I love that out of Ozlon, recognizing that NATO's no longer in the game, so instead of going to the safe spot with first move, he's immediately varying position. Very, very nice out of Ozlon. We'll see if he's running Mortar Miner with this Skeleton King. That's the most common variation.
That or Lava, yeah.
And there you see Bats, Mother Witch, gonna have a field day with all of that, and this is gonna be a lot going in the opposite direction.
Yeah, those arrows coming down to take care of that Mother Witch was a lifesaver for Ozlon. And Musketeer going to put in some good work here.
Yeah, nice little arrow zap. Muskie's going to require a response as Miner goes right out to the front. Don't think Ozlon now having both of his spells out of cycle, unable to take advantage of that moment. Zap finally ready for him. And as we reset here after the first minute 15, very close. Entourage currently about a 200 HP lead.
Yeah, and what'll be really curious to see as this game goes on is Ozlon maybe playing a Skeleton Giant for defense with the Mother Witch, or excuse me, with the Musketeer far behind, and then maybe minoring in front of that Skeleton King to make sure it doesn't get pulled by the Fisherman. These are all things that he has to think about already because these Royal Giant pushes are going to be tough. And I mean, I'm assuming he has a building. Waiting to see those last two cards. Still could be Mortar, but the spell is obviously very different because of the duels format and what he's already used in games 1 and 2.
Log takes care of the Muskie on the left-hand side as the Skeleton Kings swing their bases, and there you go, Mortar to the right-hand lane, an immediate Royal Giant right there at the bridge. Mother Witch taken care of by the Miner. Very nice Miner combo, and does Entourage have his log? Doesn't have it, so a little chunk of damage there. Still the lead for the Frenchman as we are in double elixir time, 24-22 to 26-35.
Arrows come in with that mortar shot, and then we're going to get a mortar on tower again. Right now, Ozlon is just outclassing Entourage. That was one of the best miners I've seen in competitive. There were so many spots where that Mother Witch could have went. It went exactly on top of the Mother Witch, gets great damage in, creates a ton of pressure, gets the overspend, and now you see him reaping the rewards as those bats go to town on the right-hand tower and loses the left, and it feels like things are all sewn up for Entourage.
What a fun variation on this deck. Right, there's a lot of people are playing various versions of Mortar Miner, Skeleton King. The Arrow Zap, you don't see much Zap being played at all, especially not outside of a core number of decks that don't really make it into competitive play. And Ozlon just getting a great read here, had exactly what he needed and shutting things down in game number 3.
Yeah, you see the little smile to himself as he puts his phone away, and as we come back to program, I love what we saw. We saw confident, we saw control, we saw him reaching for things that he thought, if I respect my opponent, this is what they should do. This is what I would do in that situation, so I'm going to go for the block. And you saw that great miner, and then, of course, the pressure with the mortar. The mortar shot comes in on top of those zappies. Arrows come in, another connection. The overspend, it felt like Entourage was just drowning for so much of that game. After this very first push that came in, it was all Ozlon all day.
Yeah, it really felt like that was a big potential moment, but Ozlon, and here you go. This was that play. You know, you play the mortar, you know you're against a Royal Giant, you're like, you're just giving the mortar up to the Royal Giant. Ozlon baited a trap. He baited the trap and then sprung it. That wasn't the big damage, but it was what forced Entourage into uncomfortable positions early, and then he went right back to a mortar, got it on the right-hand side, and at that point, Entourage was just scrambling to stay alive and unable to do so. Nice run here for the young player out of France, but overall, you know, you just came up against a guy who was crafty as a veteran and sprung a beautiful trap.
It's just really impressive when you look at the spells that were available for Ozlon, and then you look at the cards that he was playing against. That Skeleton King can get so much value. Fireball, log, everything that you need to take care of that Musketeer. Ozlon doesn't have a great way to take care of the Mother Witches, which would have been his biggest threat in terms of the bats, in terms of the Skarmy, and of course the Skeleton King skeletons that spawn. So when you talk about how Ozlon controlled that Mother Witch, he completely controlled the game because Entourage probably looked at that card and he goes, you know, this Mother Witch in this matchup is going to kind of be my it factor, the ace of my sleeve. I'm going to get so much value out of this. 2 Mother Witches go completely by the wayside, and that's all Ozlon needed to take that set.
Yeah, I mean, I was going to say the same thing. That was the brilliant part. You know, you talk about dual mode and when it gets really fun, and that's when you start getting into those game 3s and seeing where the real, the mental preparation pays off as you're now analyzing decks. And as you said, no Fireball available for Ozlon. Entourage probably felt great about that choice. Cool, I go Arrow Zap, and GG, well played. Ozlon moves on, and now Viper and Ozlon will be our first semi-final match. When we get there, the winner will have a shot, or maybe a direct golden ticket, depending on Mo's performance in the lower part of the bracket. So potentially only 2 games away for both of those players in that semi-final.
Yeah, that's really the fascinating thing about this. Having Morton and Mo go very last here in the opening of our bracket means that everyone is kind of waiting on bated breath to see, will Mo win? I think everyone on the top really wants Mo to win, right? Why wouldn't you? Because that means, like you said, Rich, you have to win one less set to get that golden ticket. But of course, the other 4 players remaining in the bottom half of our bracket have a lot to say about that. Rosen Noble coming up against Z? Quentin? Call him what you want. He was exceptional in our second split.
Yeah, I mean, Z's been playing very well and has been working with Jeebus, who's currently the top analyst coach in the game. So, you know, that 18-1 run to qualify and get here, Z's been a solid player for a long time. Anybody who makes a top 10 finish, I mean, that's out of this world. So he really has to be the favorite in this one. The question now is, what does Rosen have up his sleeve to go against not just a player with great momentum, but with a great support behind him?
Well, the Ukrainian is going to want a little bit of revenge here, Rich. We got a 2-0 victory from Quentin/Z over Rosen in the start of our second bracket, right? That's one of the most interesting things when you talk about, you know, having bad blood, having a history. These guys are both still pretty new to the competitive scene at this level. The fact that they already here just in the Snapdragon Pro Series have started a bit of a rivalry. Will Z 2-0 Rosen once again, or will Rosen replicate what we saw in the first split, which was dominance? You know, we saw a lot of really, really good stuff out of Rosen early, but just like Viper in our second split, they ran into a very, very tough out, and they were both eliminated early on. Let's hop into our first game here, a rematch between Rosen Noble and Quentin, or Z, who is at the top of your screen.
And you do see him going with the more classic variation of his name at the top, the Lightning Z, as Rosen going pretty interesting here. Miner, Golden Knight, Bomber, Inferno Tower. So looking like it might be a Miner control variation. We'll see if that is the case. And it's been curious to see also the Ice Spirit kind of getting mixed in a bit more in the last few months.
Yeah, seeing a lot of spirit work in general, just because of how much we're seeing bats come back. And of course, the Inferno Dragon seems to be in a lot of decks these days. There's obviously the Electro Giant versions, but also showing up again in different graveyard variations, which we haven't seen a ton of graveyard as of late because of the buff to Mother Witch.
Both guys pretty high on the personal best category. Z with a PB of 8.5K, 86-16 on the other side for Rosen.
Z just kind of rocking an old school Hog EQ deck. This is the second time that Hog Rider's been played up high and on the inside. The first time it allowed a connection with the Golden Knight on top of the Firecracker. So the Firecracker has been played once, but she was alive for about a second.
You know, you go back and forth about the use of champions in certain spots, and I love going with a viable no champion deck in game number 1 and making the game planning later in games 2 and 3 more difficult. And while this variation of Hog EQ might not be the most popular on ladder because of the viability of champions, in competitive play, it's still a darn good deck. It's still one of the most popular Hog Rider decks out there. And it's still one of those ones that in competitive play, I think, can get a lot of value. And so far, we're seeing the lead go to Z with 45 seconds in regulation left.
Yeah, definitely. And I think a big part of that equation is the Firecracker. You know, Firecracker has always been an incredibly frustrating card to deal with. But with what's really popular in the meta right now, Firecrackers are finding themselves getting a lot of value in a lot of matchups. And again, it's one of those cards that just kind of gets forgotten about for a while. And then when a meta truly serves it, by not having a lot of arrows, not having a ton of poison, which obviously we're seeing right now in this Miner poison control deck, it does get a lot of value, and it is incredibly difficult to wrangle.
And you've seen Z just do the same thing a lot on these defenses, get high against the Golden Knight, low against the Miner. And so far working out fairly well, although he is behind at the moment. Firecracker does get distracted. No damage on that right-hand tower. 2010 to 1570. And so far, Rosen controlling things very well with this Miner control deck.
Yeah, I mean, right? That's what you're supposed to do with it, and I like what he's recognized. That time, he changed up his offense a bit. He didn't go Miner plus Poison because he assumed his opponent would play the Valkyrie, right? He was getting so much Poison value on top of those last 2 sets of guards, he wanted to change it up. And now just a naked Poison for Rosen, and I don't hate it. Late Miner comes in, guards aren't going to be dropped in that. They are available, but it is not an appetizing place to play them.
You know, talking about viability of decks and thinking about this deck out of Z, the thing about this deck that we've talked about a lot is that really Earthquake was the win condition and Hog Rider was the pressure, right? That was one of the big factors about what made this deck successful for so long. Yeah. Earthquake nerfed to tower damage, and then you add in Log's recent nerf to tower damage, and suddenly the thing that really drove this deck's success, which was Spell Cycle, out of there, and now you're relying on Hog connections to really be more impactful on the damage. The more I think about this, revisiting this deck, in this matchup in competitive, it's one of those ones where I understand the mentality, but now that I'm really thinking about it, I'm just wondering if relying on this deck when you have to rely on Hog damage and not spell damage so much makes this thing kind of lose a significant amount of its punch.
Yeah, and you don't really have the ability to get a tank up high and then a miner on tower and then a poison in, right? Which is one of the ways that you can start to create a lot more pressure on the bottom of the screen here. Or excuse me, on the on the bottom of the screen. But then on the top of the screen, you talk about using that specific Hog deck. I know it's not great to use champions early on. Sometimes, you know, you want to feel it out. You want to see how you can abuse it later. But that deck that we just saw, while it is starting to come up a little bit more, there's a reason why it's not the most popular one in the game. Use that Giant Skeleton, use that Archer Queen, figure out a way to create a lot of pressure so that you can get the Hogs behind that Giant Skeleton, or you can get a Hog in the opposite lane and the Giant Skeleton tanking for that Inferno. I mean, when you look at the matchup, it's really tough. The Ice Spirit also really puts a cap on that because you can't EQ the Inferno with the Hog coming in when that Ice Spirit is played, and then every single time that Inferno came down, it was placed perfectly, and then the Bomber could still go coast to coast opposite lane by Rosen to distract the Firecracker. So once Rosen figured out exactly the way that Z could create any sort of offense that wasn't spell cycling, he goes, cool, I can naked poison, I can miner log, I can miner poison. There's so many options available there because of this great matchup and just good deck. You know, miner control decks are really tough to play, but in this matchup specifically, it's really, I think, tough to lose.
Yeah, you know, I'm looking at that combination one more time. The Firecracker almost seems like the biggest problem in that deck to a certain degree for that Hog EQ deck, and that's maybe why you've seen one of the reasons we've seen Hog EQ go other directions. Now with Earthquake nerfed and Log nerfed, we're talking already about relying more on Hog hits. Well, an activated King Tower reduces Hog hits by around 50% overall, right? When a Hog gets through, it gets reduced from 7 to 4 shots, and even more when it's already been defended. So now you're working in a version of Hog EQ that requires Hog hits significantly more, but in a version of it that's almost guaranteed to activate King Tower exceptionally early in the game. And I think that's, you put those 3 pieces together, the nerf of the spell damage, having to get Hog shots on, and then now then Firecracker, of course, guaranteeing that a King Tower is activated. It really does feel like that's kind of cut the legs out of this very classic deck.
And the last thing to kind of just add there before we talk more about game number 2 is just that Firecracker stayed alive so many times, but that's not the same as an Archer Queen staying alive. That Firecracker was so easy to control that it made it so that Rosen never had to overspend offensively. Even just one misplayed offense or defense on that Archer Queen means a massive overspend must come in, and that would have been one of the only ways. And now we see an incredibly aggressive push here from Z. No Zappies in cycle, no Goblin Cage in cycle, going for a tower trade situation here, but this is a lot that still needs to be responded to by Rosen, and he's not going to take that top tower.
Yeah, this is a tower trade that's significantly in Z's favor.
Yeah.
Yeah, there's just, you're not stopping this on the right-hand side. You're going to go ahead, lose that tower, and give up some King Tower damage. And now you've really just given Z control of the game in the first minute and 40 seconds.
Yeah, if I'm Z, I cycle something exactly like a Cage or an Inferno. I get ready to set up another E-Giant push going the opposite way. You know that you have the Elixir advantage. You know that Rosen still needs to do 457 damage to that left-hand tower. And I truly think this is going to be a game win for Quentin/Z here with looking at what's available and looking at this horrid start.
And just stacking up everything behind this Electro Giant. Fireball plus E-Spirit will clear a lot of it off. Bomber on the inside, and that's going to be a nice connection there by the Golden Knight. 2 brawlers on the board, Pigs in front. This tower on the left-hand side should be down after this sequence, but still holding on right now is Z.
Yeah, I like the overspend on defense here. I like not giving up this tower. You see that still does fall. Flying Machine is in a high Electro Giant once again. Got to clean up that Flying Machine, and now it's kind of back to what we saw at the beginning of the game. But hopefully for Rosen, he's got a better idea of how he wants to defend.
And recruits high, lightning low. Electro Giant does get through this time and taking a really nice chunk for Z early on, but he is very low on Elixir and a lot on the board right now for his opponent. Now Fireball in, Flying Machine will get on that right-hand side. Here we are, sudden death overtime, and this one is just going back and forth.
Those Zappies are so good these days. You look at the slow of them on a Hog, you look at what they just did to the Electro Giant, they're great on top of a Lava Hound. It's just great stuff. I love the Zappies. They're such a fun card, but that is something that Rosen's going to have to be a little bit more cognizant of, allowing now 2 Golden Knight connections in a row.
And there we go, the Lightning taking the Flying Machine out, and that's what Z needs, is lightning value, lightning value, lightning value, but it's so hard for him to find that lightning value with Pigs, Zappies, and recruits on the board. We did just see it come in, though, in spades. Can he defend this right-hand side effectively?
And I don't know if I love this push. It feels like it should be pretty easy, and now he's got a great counter push coming in. You can just throw an E-Giant anywhere on the board at this point. You can go for King, you can go for Princess. Those Zappies are completely negligible. He decides to go in the pocket, and a great Golden Knight connection on that tower again, man.
I think that Golden Knight hit everything. It hit every troop on the board. It went in Rosen's door. It came in, knocked a few things off of his desk, threw his closet into disarray, and still got on that tower. But keep in mind, the King Tower of Z starting to get in trouble as well.
Yeah, now 14-12 to 10-46, and just stacking Zappies here. And this time, again, he talked about that lightning value, man. That's an easy trigger pull at this point.
Electro Giant not going to get much here, but 7:29 is the mark on the left-hand side. 18 seconds left. Rosen has to sell out at this point. He's going to go with Pigs and Flying Machine, making a mad dash for that tower.
Wow.
Golden Knight comes back to play some defense. Arrows in. Lightning on the left-hand side. That's going to be it. GG, well played. Z comes and gets this one.
That was just... the Golden Knight was the golden boy of that matchup. It was the only reason that Z was able to take that win. Even at the very end, you saw that Golden Knight goes backward and plays great defense. You knew it had to come in. It had to be a sellout push, but I don't know if Rosen was expecting the Golden Knight to stay on top of those Hogs and make that Bomber get exponentially more value. It made that Flying Machine completely useless, and that was really it, right? It was all sewn up at that point. But like you called early on when we got to the 2-tower game, a crazy back and forth, and it really felt like it wasn't decided until those final moments.
Well, this was some of the early game here, and this was that big tower trade, and it's one of the features of the 7 Elixir Electro Giant. It's so much harder to pressure the opposite lane against this version of Electro Giant than it was against the 8 Elixir version. And even that one was super annoying. You know, you think about playing against Beatdown, specifically against playing against Golem, you go opposite lane pressure. Electro Giant, it's a little bit more iffy, especially with 7 Elixir being the cost.
And I really think that this game was actually decided really early on when Rosen misplayed his first few cards. You saw it was kind of a cage out in both directions. What did Rosen do? He decided to double and triple down to stop the Inferno Dragon that still cleaned up the Flying Machine. So he plays a cage, his opponent plays a cage, Flying Machine comes down to take that cage off the board and get value, Inferno comes down on top of that Flying Machine, but then you play the Zappies on top of that as well. Now your Zappies are out of cycle. and your Goblin Cage is out of cycle, you literally have nothing to stop an Electro Giant. You don't want to just drop recruits on naked because the Electro Giant's going to get so much value there, and plus you have to worry about the chain of the Golden Knight. So Rosen maybe just getting a little bit ahead of themselves early in this game. It might have felt like it was a good thing to do. You really want to take care of that Inferno, but when you get rid of your best defensive cards in your first 4 cards played, that is just giving the game away to Electro Giant, which you always have to be thinking of right now in this meta. Yes, we don't see it quite as much at the highest level, but you still see it, and you see it everywhere on ladder and grand challenges. So I do think that was probably where maybe the biggest mistake was made, even though it was in the first few seconds.
You know, now taking a look at our thoughts for game number 3, when you look at what Rosen's put himself in, we had the Minor Poison Golden Knight deck in game number 1, and then we have the Fireball Bait deck in game number 2. So you kind of think about the spells that are left and how those build around the decks you have available. You still have NATO available, so you have some of those variants, but all the best NATO variants, or a lot of them, tend to work with Golden Knight. So that kind of takes NATO a bit off the board. Log is out, which undermines a lot of the Earthquake-based decks unless you're going Royal Giant specifically. So now we're looking at Poison and now we're looking at Lightning and Rocket as the two possible, likely spells, and Rocket not so possible or not so viable in many different decks. I'm very curious to see how much I feel like he's painted himself into a corner. And with Z working with really great analysts, it feels like there's a lot of information and a much narrower deck pool than you'd like to have in game number 3 for Rosen when up against good analysis.
You know, I don't even hate the idea of Rosen copying the deck that we just saw and then swapping out the Golden Knight for something else, right? He's got Lightning available, he's got NATO available, Electro Giant's still really strong. Inferno Dragon and Inferno Tower are out of play for Z, so you could even maybe go something like Golem or Lava Hound. You know, there's a Lava plus Skelly King could be a great play here. It's really interesting. He doesn't have Flying Machine, but there's still variations out there without Flying Machine that can be effective. I would like to see maybe taking advantage of the fact that NATO's out, Lightning's out, and both the Infernos are out here. So you could probably get some really good work done with something just a little bit heavier. And then like you were just talking about on Z's side of it, there's still a lot available. He hasn't used a lot of the most popular spells in the game. Yes, Lightning and NATO are out, but those, you know, there's still Fireball available. There's still Bar Barrel available. I could also see Royal Giant coming out from Rosen. I actually think Rosen's in a pretty good spot right now, considering what he's already played and the success that he had in game 1.
You know, again, looking at this one as well, you're thinking about what's been played already on Z's side. Valk out, Mother Witch out, Bomber out. I know Poison's still on the board, but it feels like maybe Graveyard is a good choice for Rosen, who, nope, looks like he's going to go Royal Giant, so unless he's playing one of the weird Graveyard with Fisherman decks that we have seen pop out, but feeling more and more like RG.
And I'm happy to see Rosen here using that Archer Queen, knowing that he doesn't have the Inferno, doesn't have the Inferno Dragon or a Tower. And you can see right here, you got the Hunter plus the Archer Queen to make sure you have all the DPS that you're going to need on the air or on the ground.
Miner to go in right behind the Hunter. Nice pickup by the Royal Ghost. Hunter goes down anyway. Snowball in to clear, but that Snowball a bit of an over expenditure, and now kind of an annoying counter push. Not going to be dangerous, but going to require Z to either spend or take some damage, and he goes for the option of spending here.
And I like the call here with Z. You know, he didn't play Graveyard Rich, but he kind of did, right? He's playing Skeleton King plus Skarmy and most likely Mortar. So he's going to have the Mortar to defend against the Royal Giant, and he's still going to have those Graveyard aspects that you kind of hinted at when we were trying to figure out what these guys might play. So Rosen does go to RG, which is one of the things that we thought could be viable. And of course, Graveyard, not exactly, but kind of here out of Z, recognizing that Poison and Log and Arrows and Electro Spirit are out of play.
Yeah, this is going to be a tough uphill battle for Rosen trying to get through this Mortar deck. Now, here is the one wild card in this matchup, is that Z's playing the Snowball variation rather than the Log variation. So while Mortar's usually really solid against Royal Giant, not having the knockback of the Log, especially when it starts to build up in these nasty bridge fights, that could end up being challenging for Z in the later moments.
Yeah, it will really be curious to see how he uses that snowball and how much value he really does get out of it. High Musketeer here met by a high Archer Queen. A great Fireball. I love when it looks like, or feels like they're hovering those cards, and that Fireball came in the perfect moment. I don't know if I like the aggressive Mortar, though, Rich.
I was about to say the same thing. That Mortar seems like a little extra here, and he's going to go ahead and get the Skarmy out. Knows Barb Barrel isn't available. So able to hold on to it nicely and create a little bit of pressure the opposite lane, or opposite direction. So the aggressive Mortar does not end up being a problem.
Yeah, I mean, you know, you talked about baiting stuff out earlier for Ozlon, and I actually think that's probably what we just saw there. I wasn't 100% sure if the Barb Barrel wasn't in play, and you called it out. Yes, it was not. Skarmy, great response there, and a well-played little sequence there by Quentin.
And those bats doing some nice work on the Hunter in the back end as well. So far, clean game from Z, pitching a shutout as we go into sudden death overtime, 24-88, the mark on Rosen's bottom right-hand tower in this game number 3.
And he's doing exactly what you have to do with this deck, right? You have to know exactly what's in cycle and where you can get the most out of your Skarmy and the most out of your bats 100% of the time, because if you play those into a bad response, or I guess a great response for your opponent, you can lose the game right then and there.
Hunter does take the bats off, and enough to get the Hunter through for some not insignificant damage, and a nice pickup there on the Miner by Rosen will avoid all but one shot from the Musketeer. Little chip on the left-hand side, but we have a game, folks, 27-16 to 24-30, as now Z starts to put the pressure, getting closer to triple elixir.
Yeah, and neither of these guys have found a great way to get damage on tower, which is exactly what you want to see in game number 3. Skeleton King going to stack up some souls. Maybe Skarmy comes down on the right-hand side. No, goes Miner instead, plus Snowball. I like that, varying up his offense and his defense. Good stuff here from both these guys as we get to 45 seconds remaining, and the lowest tower is 23-48.
And now a little more Miner work on that right-hand side. The interesting thing here is that Z could open up a big shot, but he has not been able to use the snowball on those skeletons because he's had to save it for defense. And there you go. There's some nice damage on the left-hand lane. Archer Queen on the right-hand side, she could be a problem. Royal Giant getting taken care of by the Skarmy, but starting to spam that left-hand lane. Rosen, Miner on defense, 15 seconds left.
Yeah, Miner defensive here might not be a great sign. Needs to get another Mortar down ASAP. Doesn't go high. There's the Barb Barrel for the Skarmy, but the Mortar is there, and that is gonna do it. Rosen starts off with a great opener in the set, playing Miner Poison Control, but it's all Quentin or Z there on out. What an awesome game number 3.
Yeah, really awesome game number 3. Really well selected here. And, you know, you talk about those game 3 decisions, knowing that Royal Giant was one of probably the best deck on the board for Rosen. The Graveyard would have been a really good option as well, but knowing that was probably the best choice for Rosen, and honestly, Graveyard might have been a problem for Rosen in that matchup as well. So after a somewhat suspect game number 1 choice out of Z, coming back in game number 2, and then really locking it down in game number 3 with selection. Very, very nice work.
Yeah, and just a tough one for Rosen, right? You know, you look at him and the way that he played with the cards that he had, it was really tough to control the Skarmy and the bats. We saw, I think maybe only at the end did that Barb Barrel predict a Skarmy, but at that point, I think it was just play everything that you have at the bridge and hope the Royal Giant breaks on through. The cycle game from Z, recognizing when he could use his Skarmy to stop an RG or when he needed to rely on his Mortar, never allowing that Archer Queen to get on tower, whether it was with the Skarmy, whether it was with the high Skeleton King, or a late Snowball like we just saw right there. Really well played. This deck is super fun. Yes, it is a little bit different, like you said, man. It's got the Snowball instead of the log, but it really can dominate when you are good at tracking your opponent's cycle.
And a nice GG, well played. Z going through to our next phase of the bracket. We'll see that in just a moment here, taking a look at the matchup. And we have seen the double ball variation of this deck quite often, the Fireball Snowball version. And in this case, able to control the knockback, certainly being valuable. And we saw the game was pretty close for a long time until it opened up opportunities for that Snowball to get on offense, slow down the tower, create some openings. And once it broke open, Z was just off to the races. So Very nicely played for him. Rosen has gone on a long journey here, earned some good money, but we'll have to reset for another chance to make it into World Finals. Not going to happen today.
And it's such a I think, great thing that's coming to the game with the Skeleton King, because those skellies spawning plus any small unit behind, you never know if you're like, man, do I really need to overspend on this? And you saw just, I think it was maybe 5 units, 3 skellies and a couple bats got on that tower, and it did a boatload of damage. Let's check in with our bracket right now. 3 players have made it on through, and I guarantee you all 3 of them are rooting for the German here in our final matchup of our first part of the bracket.
Yeah, I mean, at this point, I think almost everyone's going to be rooting for Morton. Of course, he's exceptionally popular all throughout the world. 2 YouTube channels, I believe over 200,000 on each of those ones, both in German and English. A longtime fan favorite. And I think people are just tired of seeing he's so good. People just want someone to beat Mo. They're like, can we please have someone other than Mohammed Light win a matchup? And today, yeah, you definitely have 3 players who are all fingers crossed, hoping that Mohammed Light just maybe didn't have a good breakfast today or stayed up too late last night studying. Whatever it is, they're hoping that today is the day that Mo is not at complete perfection.
Yeah, I saw a tweet bright and early from Mohammed Light. I think it was a GIF with a massive trophy there. So Mo probably feeling pretty good. Oh, #1 and #2 on ladder, 88-12 to 89-46. Mohammed Light, the consensus greatest player of all time. Morton, one of the greatest of all time, and definitely the most consistent Clash Royale pro that we've seen in the CRL scene. Now, the thing that we can think about here, the thing that Morton really needs to hold on to, is in split #1 of the Snapdragon Pro Series in Europe, Middle East, North Africa, he was able to beat Mo 2-1 in that opening set. He just needs to replicate that, right? You've beat him before, no problem. Let's take a look at some highlights here from Momo, the GOAT.
Down to 0 because he spent so much in the left-hand lane, and just like that, those piggies are nuts, man. And that's it right there. EQ, mirror EQ, GG, see you in the next one. Brutal push coming in with Flying Machine, Mega Minion, Skelly Drag stacked, and a Llama Hound on the tower. And Hugo's just got to be wondering, what on earth is happening? I'm here for a reason. I played so great today, but he is just getting bodied by Mohammed Light.
This is just crazy, and that's a minor deck. So, you're trying to game plan for a guy who's game match. Mo's going to the finals again. Mighty Miner to the right hand side.
Bomber plus Golden Knight connection on that left-hand tower. 1597 is the lowest one on the board. And now game over. Mohammed Light wins another tournament. You see the smile on the camera, a little heart with his hands.
And so that's a look at the guy who is pretty good at Clash Royale. He's won once or twice and looking to win one more time here at the Snapdragon Pro Series. And again, thank you very much to Snapdragon Elite, where winning matters. And man, it's been a fun run here throughout this competition. And of course, they've been a big part of not just Clash Royale, but mobile gaming overall here in 2022.
Yeah, and you know, when you talk about Hall of Fame moments, Hall of Fame players getting to play against each other at the highest level, we've been wondering for a while, does Morton come back season after season after season when he gets so close to the top, but he doesn't quite get the gold? And, you know, he's done it. He's done it 4 years running, right? He just keeps coming back, keeps coming back. But who knows how many more times we're going to get a matchup like this in a moment when it matters. 2 of the best to ever do it, and definitely going to be one of the best of 3s we're going to see today. We're going to hop into game #1 right now between Mohammed Light and Morton. Morton top of your screen, Mo at the bottom. And here we go. Always going to be one for the ages between these 2 guys.
Yeah, this is the matchup you want to see. This is the one that you want to have fun with. And our first Mighty Miner of the day to work against that Hog Rider. No connections here. And Morton, one of the all-time great bait players, looking like he's going with the Riley bait deck. So that against Mohammed Light running a variation of Hog. And you see the Archer Queen come out high here against the Princess. This is going to be interesting.
Yeah, Arch Queen comes out, which means it's going to be the Giant Skeleton version most likely. Ice Spirit comes in, maybe Skelly's late with that. Princess, no, decides to log instead. So two very strong decks in the meta, two very popular decks in the meta, and also a different look early on from both of these guys in game one. And I really, really like that. And I also love that control there on the Princess. You know, our producer talks about interactions, or I mean, why Mohammed Light is so great. And we were mentioning interactions, and that's a fun one. Fire Spirit to the opposite lane, Skelly's up high, knowing Log's out of cycle, and a couple cog hits there to give Mo the lead.
I don't remember who it was, and no, going with the mirror variation instead, putting pressure in both lanes. A little trickeration here out of Morton to get himself back in the mix, 26-17 on the left-hand side. And as I was saying, someone on Twitter, I don't remember who it was asking, what is it that makes, like, if you define it, what makes Mohammed Light so good? And there are two real factors that people were talking about that really make him the best player on the planet. One is he generally plays mistake-free, or the most mistake-free Clash Royale out of anyone on the planet, which is, you know, you don't make mistakes, that's huge. But the second part is he's really good at recognizing, and Morton just, given the good game, he's fallen way too far behind early on with this bait deck. The trick already used, this is going to be a tough one for him. So now that Morton's waved the white flag, let me finish the thought. It's that Mohammed Light is really, really good at recognizing within the first 30 seconds to a minute what he has to do, whether he has the advantage or not, and what needs to be done to win the game overall, even in a bad situation. Probably we talk about the micro. It's not just the macro, but the early macro. Understanding that immediately and making those changes right out the gate. That's one of the things that makes Mohammed Light just so difficult to deal with.
Yeah, and you saw that really be put into practice with the very first immediate EQ cycled on top of the cannon that came in. He knew that Morton really only had one great response there when you're talking about how much elixir he had available. So he just goes hog plus EQ, easy, 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 gets two cannons off the board, allows a ton of hog hits to come in, and now we see Morton varying up where that cannon is placed, but still another hog hit comes in, 976, and then you see there a high cannon to make sure nothing can tank for, and oh man, I love it. You love the, you talk about interactions again. He does the Fire Spirit plus Skelly combo on the left-hand side. He logs the right. It doesn't get cleaner than that.
Morton just trying to cycle as many of these barrels as possible. Archer Queen does not get the shot picked up here by the Mighty Miner, as we are in sudden death overtime. Morton down, but not officially out yet. Not the kind of guy, he might have said the good game, but not the guy who activates King and puts down his phone, so we'll see him play this one out. And a high cannon, he's staying in this one.
Yeah, and you know, but again, when you talk about Mo, he knew that Morton was going to go for the high cannon in the center. He drops a cannon of his own to take it off the board, gets the Earthquake cycle to come in, and then the second cannon does come down there for Morton. So, yeah, like you said, he's a guy that never gives up, but you talk about Mo being able to see into the future, to know the best play, and then abuse the best response, and he just did that in spades in game number one. And the only reason that Morton got within 1,000 HP is because he is that good with bait, and he's that good always, but Mohammed Light didn't even get close to losing that game, man.
Yeah, that was exceptional dominance there from Mohammed Light, the thing we've come to expect. And now, you know, Morton, it's one of those guys I really think should be at CRO World Finals. What is a World Finals without Morton in the mix? But man, this is going to be a tough one here. Has to come from behind, down two against Mohammed Light. And, you know, this was interesting. We talked about how Hog now requires that you get Hog hits. You can't rely on Spell Cycle here. And that's what happened here. Mohammed Light got so many Hog connections, and that's just not going to work in this matchup.
And it's because of the layers that he created on offense. Clearing the path with the Earthquake, clearing the cannon with the cannon of his own, having the elixir available by making massive positive trades, right? You get a Fire Spirit and Skellies to take care of one barrel, and then a Log to take care of another mirrored barrel. That's a, what, 4 for 7 trade or something like that? My math might be wrong, but it's a massive elixir lead. So then you can go right back on offense with your Hog Rider plus Earthquake, or Hog Rider plus Cannon up in the middle, because you know Morton doesn't want to put it in Earthquake range. So you go Cannon up high with the Hog, then you get the Earthquake in for the tower damage. He has to play the Cannon late up high. Now it's not in cycle anymore. There's so many things that he did right, because, again, he's just playing the macro and the micro immaculate.
Yeah, I mean, that's the big one, is immaculate is the best way to put it. Mohammed Light wins every once in a while, and now this is an interesting comparison because you have Mohammed Light, who has more number ones than anyone in the game. 4 top ladder finishes in a row, starting at the end of last year into the first 3 months of this year. Wins basically every competition ever. And then you have, on the other side, Morton, who has more number 2s, I think, than anybody. The number of times he's been the runner-up, including on ladder to Mohammed Light specifically.
Yep.
You know, the king of number 2s, and even his number 1, the CRL Western Championship in 2019. You know, you go to that final matchup, Team Liquid had already gone through a gauntlet to qualify for World Finals, and they were just happy to be going to World Finals there at the end.
Yeah.
So, you know, you have the all-time greatest number 1 player and the all-time greatest number 2 player. The question is, can Morton be the number 1?
So Morton going with Zappy's Poison so far, and could be Hogs, could be Graveyard.
Hogs would be interesting here. Archer Queen down might be the case. And Valk doesn't get the swing here, so Mo gonna have to contend with this Archer Queen. Miner out front to the safe spot. Electro Spirit not enough to stop it. Miner gonna mitigate the damage here, but still lead does go to Morton as the first minute ticks away, 25-38 to 28-45.
Yeah, Miner Zappy's Poison. No surprise that the wall breakers come out here for Mo. When you see Valkyrie and Magic Archer paired together, that's usually what you're always going to see. It is going to be Mortar out of Morton, top of your screen here, but that Mortar not going to stay alive for very long, and this Magic Archer is going to get a lot of value on all 3 of these Zappies.
Yeah, that was a really nice Magic Archer with the lineup there against the Zappy and the Mortar. And now Morton 5 on the board. Mohammed Light, an extra 5 in the hole to contend with it. Fireball plus Zappy. Oh boy, that's a nicely timed one. So has to spend the wall breakers.
And that was a mistake. That was a rare mistake out of Mohammed Light. That Electro Spirit came down just 1 step too early, so that Archer Queen was not in Princess Tower range, and then that Fireball had to come out, plus the wall breakers. So you see Mohammed Light making a rare mistake, and Morton being as good as he is, he goes, I must capitalize off this. He did just overspend 2074 to 2646.
And you're going to see Morton cycle the poison onto the Magic Archer there. And right now, Mo just keeping the poison off that right-hand side, knowing he has a lot of work to do to get back into the lead. Wall breakers split in the middle. And I'd be really shocked to see much in the way of wall breaker connections through here today. It looks like Magic Archer value will get on that left-hand tower.
Wow.
Expect Magic Archer and Miner to be the 2 primary ways Mo gets on tower here.
Nice King Tower activation there by Mo, and that's going to really help out a lot here as Morton's going to be relying on his Miner to get a ton of damage in this matchup.
But he's happy to take that poison value on the right-hand side. So this is fascinating. Nice little snowball there to get the Miner off tower. Connection gets through. Valk does not swing. 1792 to 2047 as we go into sudden death overtime. The lead for Morton, but can he hold on to it?
Wallbreaker will take one of those shots. Now Valkyrie's out in either direction here to defend that Mortar, but Mo plays his just a little bit low.
Those skeletons were so nice. Took care of the one Wallbreaker and went back and took care of the Miner as well. So a ton of value out of those skeletons. That is the kind of trade Morton needs right now.
Yes, and like you said, man, these wall breakers having a really hard time breaking on through. Valkyrie placed exactly where you want, but not for a Magic Archer. There's the snowball that comes in late, but still will get it. Does not get another shot, so just off by hair, and now that shot comes in.
That Magic Archer is the X factor here in this matchup for Mo. He's down now after that Mortar does give the dying breath to the right-hand side, and now pressure in both sides. The Archer Queen gonna get picked up and pushed back by the Valkyrie, but the Miner to the inside here puts about 400 HP difference as the Valk does get the late pickup here. And what a cheeky nado out of Mohammed Light.
God.
Gets the damage for the Miner, gets the lineup for the Magic Archer, and just like that, we are separated by about 24 HP.
And that's a big sign to Morton that he needs to start varying it. That Magic Archer was for the Mortar and for the lineup, and that was one of the best Magic Archers I think I've ever seen. Mortar going to be distracted by the Valkyrie. Fireball cycle starting to come in. 376. Mortar is up high. It will take care of one of those wall breakers. Valkyrie takes care of the second. 514, 318.
Mohammed Light recognizing the Magic Archer is the key to this matchup. The question is, can he get enough in now to get the win, to secure this thing? Miner to the left-hand side. Snowball, nope, not going to happen. GG, well played. Morton holds on. We're going to game number 3. And we just saw two master chefs cook us a beautiful meal of Clash Royale.
And it's crazy to think that that's how good Morton still is. The one mistake by Mohammed Light early on with the overspend gave him a 600 damage lead. And then from that point on, Mohammed Light was able to play a ton of making up that little bit of a mistake by great Magic Archer placements, great lineups. But Morton takes that lead, rides it to the finish line, and we're going to game number 3 again between these two guys, which is exactly what you want here as we close out our quarterfinals.
Yeah, I mean, you talk about that difference between being pretty good and being great. We saw that here on both sides, right? We saw this nice lineup here with the Magic Archer to get really, really solid value. We saw Morton getting the really excellent value on the right-hand side. And then we saw Mohammed Light. We talked about Mo and understanding macro and recognizing, how do I win this one? He recognized fairly early on in the mid-game that he was not going to win by wall breakers and that the miners were not going to do enough. So he started really working on that Magic Archer damage, and this was insanely tight. You know, you look at it, you go, well, that was 300 HP. It wasn't 45 or 57. 300 HP was an insanely tight margin in this matchup.
Oh, 100%. You get one more Magic Archer shot come in, you just get a fireball cycle going on with a little bit of NATO action. You saw Mo, a little bit of a smile up at the camera, and that's what you love to see. There's nothing but respect between the two of these guys. No, they're not the best of friends in the world, but they are friends and game recognized game. Both of them happy to go to game number 3. Morton probably frustrated with game 1. Mo probably frustrated with game number 2. Now we do that fun dual conversation, right? When you go back and you look at what's been available, the other thing that I love about what they've played here in these first couple games, you know, Mohammed Light has used only one champion in game 1 with the Archer Queen. Morton has used one in each of his games, and I actually think that's probably the way you do it, right? When you look at the way that these guys stack up on paper, Morton technically being the underdog, use the best cards in the game, use them to your advantage, try to win out, right? Mohammed Light on the other side of it, always known for being able to come from behind, or usually not even from behind, especially because it's BO3s, but always winning when it's tied up 1-1 because he does such a great job with his analyst. Now, Morton has gotten better with picking decks, and a big part of it is because of that same guy in Jebba's, right?
Except for, of course, you know, he's sitting out this matchup between these two because he's not going to pick sides in this one. And that makes this fascinating. You know, you talk about Mohammed Light not playing a champion in game number 2 and what kind of options that opens up, which is a ton. On the other side of it, Morton did play 2 champions, but one of them in the Mighty Miner, really not used in much, right? Really used in bait, and then not the most impactful. So you still have Skeleton King and Golden Knight, which both give you very different directions. The other X factor here on Morton's side is that from a spell perspective, he's used Rocket, which is an almost nothing, Mirror, which is an almost nothing unless you're cheesing on ladder, and then Poison, Snowball, Log. Log probably the most impactful one out of those 3. But while he might have narrowed himself down a little bit from the champion perspective, from a spell perspective, he still has a lot of options that give him many different directions from deck selection perspective.
I would love to see Mo go with something cheeky like Lava Clone, because no Snowball, no Poison, no Princess. You feel like you have to see arrows come in with the spells that are available, but that's not going to be the case. We see Mohammed Light coming out with a Dark Goblin early on, but still kind of the same idea in the fact that the Log is not available and the Poison is not available, so that Dark Goblin should be able to get a lot of value on Mo's side of the board.
Morton looking like it might be Hog EQ Giant Skeleton, and there comes the Giant Skeleton just as I'm saying that. And not totally sure about that Golden Knight ability spend. Maybe he thought that the Musketeer might step a half step closer. Does not get the connection. And now that drill's going to go down. Bomb Tower up high, and you will not hear me again say don't play Bomb Tower after some of the previous performances we've seen with it.
Yeah, and you kind of had to feel that Mo knew that Morton was playing Hog, and Morton probably knew that Mo had another building with the fact that he cycled that Goblin Drill early on after seeing the Giant Skeleton plus Musketeer played. They both obviously knew what the other one was playing, but then when you look at these decks, Morton is kind of much more by the numbers in the meta, swapping out the Musketeer for the Archer Queen. That happens a lot in decks to put in a different champion. But then when you look at Mohammed Light playing a very interesting variation on Drill.
And that Musketeer did not get taken out by the poison. Archer, or the Princess Tower, will do the job. Morton choosing not to put something in front of it and force a connection. Kind of slow play on both sides here after the exciting opening exchange. And here comes the Earthquake in. Can this Hog sneak on through? Ice Spirit, Golden Knight, Dark Goblin up to the task.
And Morton needs to just take this elixir advantage that he got. There it is. He should still be up by 1. Neither of these guys going to get any. That is just a really great exchange on both sides. I love the early Earthquake from Morton getting on top of that bomb tower. It's really hard to hide those bomb towers from Earthquakes, so that's something Morton's going to want to do time and time again. And also Morton being a guy that loves to switch lanes and create dual lane pressure. And as I say that, here we go. Hog to the left, Giant Skeleton to the right. Dark Goblin going to do a great job helping with both.
Dark Goblin is going to be really annoying for Morton throughout this matchup because he has no really great way of getting to it, right? He doesn't have log. So he has to hope he gets to it on the back end. The Giant Skeleton bomb taking care of business there. But Mohammed Light can really abuse the Dark Goblin in this matchup, and we'll see how he chooses to do that as we get later in the game.
Yeah, you know, and that's one of the things that, if you remember me calling out, saying that you think that Morton might run arrows in this game just in case he ran into a card like Dark Goblin, or I was talking about, you know, Skeleton King plus Lava Hound. And it's just tough, man, because the arrows don't really work well in synergy with the cards that we're seeing in the deck that Morton is running. But that means that this 3 Elixir Dark Goblin is going to wreak havoc. That and the guards. Both of those cards are going to get an insane amount of value.
And the Snowball to make some room. Fire Spirit comes in and mitigates the damage, but Mohammed Light slowly creeping away in this one. Does the Hog get a shot? No, Ice Spirit stops it. The Ice Spirits have been really nice for Mohammed Light so far in this matchup. Of course, we are still pretty close, a little under 300 HP separating the game as we go into the final 90 seconds.
Yeah, and Morton needs to start innovating now, man, because he's starting to get in trouble. This cycle is going to be brutal from Mo. He's happy to get that snowball value that comes in, and he's doing a really good job of keeping those Hogs from getting on top of the tower because of all the options he has in the snowball, in the guards, in that Ice Spirit. So there you go. Guards come in, bomb towers in. Doesn't even need to spend the Ice Spirit this time around on the left-hand side. And no
the
Hog
body
hits.
blocks. Yeah, the Hog just not finding a path, right? Just getting moved around left, getting moved around right, having to try to force his way in, and the Hog just can't quite get there. Morton's doing a good job with these drills, but as good of a job as he can do, really.
Bomb tower plus Dark Goblin will be enough. Maybe high guards here to get on top. No, he goes Golden Knight instead to maybe create more pressure on the left-hand lane. And again, drills a flying on the right. Drills plus Fireball. Mo has no problem, or excuse me, Snowball. Mo has no problem doing that in triple Elixir.
And one Goblin does escape. That is so frustrating for Morton. Feeling like he was doing the best he could over there. Hog trying to sneak on through. Can the Hog connect? Snowball slows it down. Hog does not get a shot. Musketeer, Giant Skeleton, left-hand side, second Musketeer. Final 16 seconds. Dark Goblin staying there in the middle. Does this Muskie turn? Does this Muskie turn? Can a Hog get a shot here at the end? Ice Spirit. Morton just pressuring. 5 seconds. 9:09. Can anything get through? Not gonna happen. Mohammed Light just gave a gift, and whoa, the little goblin out from Mo here in that one. And Mohammed Light, man, continues to be the most dangerous player in the entire game.
You know, I talked about the arrows, and it just felt like Morton would know that Mo would use one thing that needed to be focused on, whether it was a firecracker, whether it was a lava, whether it was a clone, whether it was the Dark Goblin, right? The Dark Goblin plus the guards, so much value, and Morton had no way to stop the Ice Spirit, no way to stop the guards, no way to stop the Dark Goblin. So it was just absolute perfection there. And then even that late game, you were saying, you know, the Dark Goblin came down, Musketeer trying to find it. Mo played it just one tile low, right? Talk about the micro. He knew the only way to get that Dark Goblin off the board would be a high Musketeer. Musketeer can't reach it. Dark Goblin gets an exponential amount of value again. And then it was just a sellout run to the finish for Morton. He could never break on through, and that's just great stuff from Mo once again.
Yeah, I mean, the big thing here is that Mo almost never had to spend Snowball on defense, which then meant he could spend Snowball on offense just at will. You see a couple of them coming in the big moments, but he was able to spend Snowball at will to support the Goblin Drill and get Goblin Drill connections on towers. I think you hit the nail on the head here, Andrew. The arrows, you know, this deck typically runs log plus EQ, right? So you get just that little bit extra damage, and think of, over the course of this matchup, how those logs might have stacked up. The extra chip here, they would have required Mo to think about the game a little bit differently, would have maybe broken through the guards, or of course the log being able to take care of the Dark Goblin. So log out, arrows, I think the arrows would have been the much better call here instead of Barb Barrel in this matchup.
Yeah, because you talk about the log or the arrows and the value that they get. Even just having that log is even a scare factor for Mohammed Light, where he goes, well, I don't know where I can place the Dark Goblin. I definitely can't go guards plus Ice Spirit right on top of the hog, because that's a great bit of log value there. And it's an even trade, plus the damage comes in from the log every single time. So once again, you know, we talked about how good both these guys are, but Mohammed Light's deck selection is always perfect, and we have worked all the way through our quarterfinals. We've said goodbye to 4 players. Only 4 remain, but Rich, only 3 have to worry about getting that golden ticket.
If I'm Viper and Ozlon, I'm sitting there looking at Mohammed Light and going, dude, just win. Just go ahead and take Z off the board. Guarantee one of us a golden ticket. And that's, I mean, really, we're going to see Viper Ozlon, I think, as the first of the 2 matchups. But it's going to come down to what happens between Z and Mo, because we might have a final for $4,000, but have the golden ticket all sewn up. So very curious to see how that one shakes up. And Z, man, he just has to be cursing every god in the book that he got put on this side of the bracket.
Yeah, it's a lot more difficult. Of course, you end up on the other side like you're talking about, and there's one less match that you have to win, but couple more matches coming your way, and of course our grand finals after these next 2 in our semifinals. We'll be back in just a minute.
Pro Series is brought to you by Snapdragon Elite Gaming, Monster Energy, and DHL.
me. You got a problem with me? Love, you don't want it with me. Man, you won't ever stop me. Who y'all really got a problem with? Who y'all really trying to solve them with? Who don't really like the sound of this? Who come with me getting down to this? You better step back, get your neck cracked, get laid down where you best step. Better check that with a fresh map. Get lost now with no extract. Like, look, that's all me. Got my number, don't call me. We eating up, that's all beef. You freezing up, that's y'all's team. Cause we don't really lose no more. All about heating up, leaving that cold. You can see me eating up, killing that show. I ain't about giving up, no. Nah, cause they don't want it with me. Look, you got a problem with me. Look, cause y'all don't want it with me. If you start a fire with me, then you never gonna stop me. Ay, sound the alarm. We about to go on. You getting it wrong. Time to go off. Can't hold us back. Truth hurts. You always.
And welcome back, everybody, to our semifinals at the Golden Ticket bracket for the Snapdragon Pro Series Europe, Middle East, and North Africa. If you're just joining us, I'm Rich Slayton, that's Andrew Guy, and we are here to see which one of these four players will take home the big prize, and which one of the three, besides Mohammed Light, will get the golden ticket, or will he get his, or let's put it this way, will he get his third and then gift it over to somebody else, or will someone else derail him and truly claim that glory?
Yeah, and that's really the conversation that happens at the beginning of the show, and probably the beginning of most every shows for the rest of the season, is will Mo keep stacking those golden tickets? But two guys who are hoping Mo at least picks up one more win in our bracket are Ozlon and Viper. Both of them have been exceptional in the Snapdragon Pro Series. Viper wins our first split. Ozlon takes second place in the second behind Mohammed Light. Of course, you see Viper there with a #1 ladder finish. Ozlon still an incredible player in the top 40 there on ladder. But like you said, Rich, the big caveat is one of these guys is going to move forward to our grand finals where they will probably go up against Mohammed Light, right? It feels really, really hard to bet against him. So in their minds, this is where the pressure comes in, which is where we've seen both of them struggle in the past. Pressure gets to them. I'd say Ozlon a little bit more than Viper, but this feels like the grand finals for them to an extent, knowing that the bottom of the bracket could be sewn up unless Z pulls off a big-time underdog win.
Yeah, and that's the big question is, can Z get through Mohammed Light? We don't know, but first we have this Viper-Ozlon matchup, and this one has to be the one that's more stressful for both of them for the moment. They can't control what happens in the other bracket, but they do have control over what happens here. And, you know, Viper does, I think, have the analyst advantage over here working with Jibas, but you know, so far, Ozlon, we've seen him make really good calls as we get later into the BO3s, so that's kind of a fun X factor here between these two players.
Yeah, definitely, you know, and that was one of the biggest things about Viper. It felt like he didn't really know what decks he needed to play in those highest pressure moments or as sets got further in, or especially because, you know, at World Finals, we were in a double elimination bracket. So when you get down to that lower end of the bracket, you're going to game number 5 or 6. And that's when it felt like Viper was struggling. Like you said, the analyst has helped that out. Yes, we've been talking a lot about that golden ticket, Rich, but there's also a big pile of gold at the end of this rainbow for pretty much all these guys now who are going to walk away with at least $1,000 bucks.
That's right. We have gotten to our top 4, so this next round is a best of 3 to add another $1,000 or more on top of that. The two winners here will be guaranteed a minimum of $2K, and of course, our overall champion gets $4,000 plus that golden ticket. And what I don't know, Andrew, the question that's never been answered for me, is does Supercell actually send them a golden ticket? Do they get one to put on their wall, or is the golden ticket just metaphorical? Is it just theoretical? Because honestly, I hope they print out real golden tickets, frame them, and send them. And of course, I hope they send all the golden tickets that Mo gets to him so that he can decorate that background.
I love that. I love that idea. I'd love to get a golden ticket. I mean, if you ever watched the old school Willy Wonka, you know, that was a thing that you looked at as a kid. You're like, man, that golden ticket, it's so shiny. It looks like it's made out of real gold. I think Supercell could probably come up with something cool there. Just like Viper came up with a really great defense with the bar barrel coming down from Ozlon in front of the cannon cart. Viper goes and gets a great positive trade with just a Fire Spirit to clean all those things up. And now Ozlon, top of your screen, looking like he maybe could be running Golem?
It's certainly possible here, and Golden Knight leaning that direction more. Cannon card, I feel like, is more of a Golem card than an E-Giant card, but we'll, of course, see as we get past these 90 seconds which direction he's going in. Viper does have the faster cycle, and Mega Minion also makes it feel more like Golem.
Yeah, and Viper having the faster cycle and also having a lot of great single target DPS in that Archer Queen and in the guards. But as this game moves forward, it'll be really interesting to see how Ozlon can punish with his really, really heavy deck.
Well, Viper on his side does have the Archer Queen, and Ozlon does have the Lightning, which is going to make some of those DPS-based defenses more and more difficult. So the big question is, I mean, there goes the big pile of rocks in that top left-hand corner. And Mortar played opposite lane immediately, so Viper relying on the cycle here to get back and play the defense he needs.
Man, how many times have we seen Viper play Mortar? I feel like this is not a common win condition for him, but obviously still one of the strongest in the game. And I already on that left-hand side as he gets this next Mortar down. That's right in cannon cart range.
And the log didn't hit the Golden Knight, so that Golden Knight you're seeing probably should have been taken out by that giant skeleton bomb. Instead, not at all, because the Golden Knight was in dash when the log came through. So this stack here at the bridge, it's going to get some significant damage. It's not going to take the game over completely, but you see how low Viper is on Elixir. Does get that next giant skeleton down.
That's
and
it.
What a cheeky NATO. Woo, boy. Ozlon came to play today.
Yeah, and you know, again, you know, at the beginning of this game, I just said, how many times have we seen Viper play Mortar? And I really don't like that Mortar that was played up high on offense there. You know, you can play those Mortars aggressively when you know your opponent is down lower in Elixir, or when you have a great way to respond to that Mortar with the ability to take those heavy units off the board. Had any of that. So cycling that Mortar that early on, getting it up high on offense meant that even if Ozlon didn't want to defend it, which he did with the Baby Dragon, which still got on Princess Tower, he could have eaten that whole bit of damage and just set up an entirely unstoppable push. But instead, he goes Baby Dragon, the smarter decision, gets some damage on tower, but sets up that Golem in the back in the top left-hand side. And that was already it, because where's the second Mortar going to come down? Well, you got to play it up high so that Golem doesn't go off on tower, but then the cannon cart is right there, and you don't want to get it too close for the Golden Knight to dash. So it was just all things going wrong, and then the NATO was really just that cherry on top.
I'm seeing in the Twitch chat, Matrix the Carry saying Ozlon got this in the bag, saying it very early on in this matchup. And, you know, you're playing Mortar and Archer Queen as the two real primary pieces of your defense against the Golem, up against a Golem Lightning deck. You add in the NATO on top of that, and that's already just really, really bad news. So nice read there from Matrix the Carry, and this is one of those situations where, you know, even if Viper played perfectly, it feels like this was going to be an uphill battle from the beginning.
100%, 200%, because the other thing to add on to what you were just talking about in the lightning value is those guards. Those guards are pretty much useless because you do want to play them up as high as you can to get all that insane DPS on top of the Golem, but then you couple that with a bar barrel and a Golden Knight dash, and they just go off into, you know, no man's land. They're gone. They don't exist anymore. And then you get, of course, the splash from the Baby Dragon, the NATO to pull that giant skeleton back, and it was just all bad for Viper. I don't dislike that he ran Mortar because it is such a strong win condition right now. It just felt like he wasn't very familiar with maybe that specific matchup, but also that Lightning really made things tough.
Yeah, I mean, you see the Golem come down to that back left-hand corner, and you go, okay, I know that this defense is going to be brutal because of the Lightning. I have to create some offense in the opposite lane, but you're not playing a deck that heavily pressures the opposite lane quickly, right? You're not playing a win condition that can suddenly punish when that Golem gets dropped there in that back corner. So, you know, what do you do at that point? Mortar, and you go with Mortar and you plan to cycle back around, hopefully DPS it down. That's one option. You know, he could have tried to, if he didn't have Archer Queen, I don't think, in cycle, to play her aggressively in that right-hand lane and try to take the tower in one shot. So just a tough spot there for Viper overall. And we go into game number 2 with the match point advantage for Ozlon.
Yeah, Ozlon has played some great stuff today. Viper cycling Earthquake early on here. Mortar comes down as soon as the EQ goes off the board, and a Valkyrie the opposite lane. So Viper looking like he's still going back to his favorite win condition in Hog Rider. And Ozlon playing Mortar, which we know he loves.
And again, I get really curious. I mean, look, every matchup is different, obviously. Hog EQ with Firecracker. And also, I don't know if he's running this as a triple spell with no building, potentially. But Hog EQ with Firecracker, I just get really suspect about that one in the current meta.
See how that plays out, as we've only ticked through 1 minute of gameplay thus far. And as of right now, Viper's still behind.
And I don't know who that is in the peanut gallery spamming the crying skeleton, but someone there is just obsessed and, you know, definitely trying to give the shade. My guess is it's one of Ozlon's fans here, but maybe it's also one of Viper's friends cheesing him in the middle of this very important match.
I do have to give some love out to Royale API, because you can go back and see who did what in the emotes, and it's always fun to look and see who the trash talker was, and anyone can do it. If you have a Royale API account, you can put someone on blast. So here we go. Ozlon setting up with a Dark Prince to take care of that Firecracker, and the Archer Queen working down the opposite lane with the Miner not to tank for. Unfortunate timing.
Lot down this middle, and Firecracker not going to get the King Tower activation, and you know Ozlon wants to get that early. So we'll see how well Viper protects that Firecracker from activating King Tower, how much he forces Ozlon to make other choices as time goes on. So far, though, it's a really significant gap here, Andrew. 900 HP between these two.
Yeah, you know, I mean, the amount of work that Ozlon's already been able to put in with that Miner has been exceptional, but now not having a lot of elixir to defend, but the Archer Queen turns and gets on top of the Hog, and that is a big time interaction going in Ozlon's favor.
Miner goes to the back, but all the elixir has to be spent up top to stop the Archer Queen. Dark Prince goes opposite lane, and this just feels like it's going from bad.
Yeah, and now you see Viper switching lanes, because since the towers are even, you don't really want to be going into your weaker of the two towers, plus he had a unit on the board. Firecracker going to get a little bit of splash damage in here. Log going to mitigate, but yeah, this is looking real bad for the Frenchman.
You know, I might have to DM Ian, who's been the best Hog EQ player on the planet, and ask him what his thoughts are on Hog EQ Firecracker now that both Log and EQ are nerfed, because it really, the more I see it in practice, the more it just seems like this might be the end of this deck in the upper echelons.
Yeah, I agree with you, man, especially because, you know, Ian was a guy that loved playing this deck before it got nerfed in terms of the EQ and in the Log, and we have not seen it have much success here today.
Dark Prince takes care of the Firecracker. Hog going to the left-hand lane. Gonna go get a Log on there as well. EQ will make room for 2 Hog shots on that left-hand side, so not insignificant here. Down by about 700 and change is Viper as we go into the final 75.
Yeah, that was a really nice recruit plus Electro Spirit that came in there for Viper to make a good positive trade.
Archer Queen will finish off the Hog. Log there just for safety. And now it's Viper putting pressure on into the other direction. Fireball comes down, plus the skeleton, so not going to get a lot. And now that right-hand tower getting very low, down to 763.
763 to 1704. Viper fighting for his life here as that Earthquake's going to come in. Valkyrie tanking for the Hog, and this Hog Rider going to demand more of a response. So AQ comes down along with the Log, and this is just tough stuff. 1542, 763. Miner goes to the back, picked up by the Skellies. Fireball comes in.
Fireball in 556, I think is the number behind there. Yes, as we see things get out of the way. Final 25 seconds, and it's going to require a really serious problem for Ozlon if Viper's going to break on through here. Archer Queen high EQ, but second mortar already available. And this Hog going to die down pretty quickly. Second Hog trying to break on through. Fireball will clean things up, and Ozlon takes this one in a clean 2-0, and now he just has to wait. Does he have a guaranteed golden ticket or a fight for that trip to World Finals in his future?
What a fascinating situation for this guy to be in. I mean, he has not been one of the biggest names in the space. He's been working his way up for so long. Like you said, people over in Turkey, they absolutely love him. And we all know about those Turkish fans and how vocal they are. They got to be celebrating big, as this is just one set away. One set away, maybe two, but look at probably like one, depending on what Z can do, from a golden ticket appearance, a World Finals appearance for Ozlon.
Wow, this is just a shutdown, and you know, we're talking about the Earthquake just doesn't do as much, so again, you're relying on hog damage, and Ozlon knows that early. His whole thought is just stop hog hits. Don't worry about the Earthquakes, just stop hog hits. I know that I can get my win condition on tower more than you can get your win condition on tower. So just make sure that that's what I do from here on out, and it's going to be a GG well played. And man, Firecracker, you were fun for a long time, but I don't think you're really part of the meta anymore.
And you see right there, once again, Ozlon knowing that the road to victory is not yet done. He stays calm, he stays composed. I'm sure he's ecstatic about picking up a win. He recognizes the situation that he's in just the same as we do, but still keeping composed, knowing that Mo is not a sure win in that bottom bracket, and he might have to win one more set to ensure that golden ticket. And yeah, you talk about being able to get those miners on tower. Like you said, man, I can get my win condition on tower more than you can yours. And there's no way to stop the miner fireball damage late game, right? Because that Valkyrie must be used on offense to help break through that mortar plus with the EQ coming down. You need that Valkyrie, you need the EQ, and you need the hog behind, which means there's really nothing to pick up a miner plus fireball.
And I see someone in chat asking, who was it? How do you check who spammed the emotes? Well, I'm actually doing it right now. You can go to Royale API and then you click on the battle. And if you have to be logged in to actually use the feature. But there's a little like speech bubble that is the emote log. So I'm gonna see if I can go figure out who hit all the scrying skeletons, and it was Gokmen. So my guess here is that was a Turkish fan. So Gokmen, very well played. With the emotes, I do think that was the deciding factor.
100% getting your 15 minutes of fame here on the conclusion of the Snapdragon Pro Series in Europe, Middle East, North Africa, as we take a look here at our bracket. Ozlon in the grand finals, guaranteed $2,000 and just one set away that he has to play in from a golden ticket. But Quentin and Mohammed Light is coming up next. Can Quentin beat out Momo and make Ozlon work extra hard to get that golden ticket? Or is Quentin the one that's going to walk away with the win here today? Now, let's remember, in our split 2, Quentin 2-0'd Rosen Noble, 2-1 Schwatzen, but then lost to Ozlon 2-0. So this is going to be a little bit of a rivalry coming, and this is going to be a great matchup between the GOAT and Quentin, who has been playing some really good Clash Royale here in the Snapdragon Pro Series.
But again, you know, I have to call the big factor here. I'm going to double check to make sure my notes to make sure I'm right here. But I believe Quentin, aka Z, has been working with Jeebus as his analyst throughout this competition, which means that then you come into this one and there's no way that Jeebus is going to be analyzing against Mo here. So one of the things that has been a key to Z's success in this tournament, not available for him in this matchup. So yeah, that's a rough one for him when you're trying to go up against the best player on the planet.
Yeah, and I think that Mo has proven time and time again that because he does work with some of the biggest analysts in the game, he's learned a lot from them, and since they are getting hired to work with other people, when it's on him to decide the deck on his own, he's done a great job. Now, I don't 100% know if Jeb is set out between Morton and Mo, but I would really assume so. Like you said, it's kind of a tradition for him when he's representing two guys. It doesn't really feel fair to pick for either of them, because then they can come back and say, hey man, you gave me a bad matchup, right? So instead, sitting things out, but Mohammed Light hasn't really suffered when he doesn't have an analyst as much as maybe some of the other players out there, like we've spoken about, who have really needed to lean on an analyst to help extend their game and extend their runs in these types of competitions. So here we go. Momo and Z. Mohammed Light playing for golden ticket number 3. Z would love to show up at World Finals.
I see someone in the Twitch chat saying, I can beat Mo. Well, guess what? You can try that this year. Go ahead and click on the esports tab inside the Clash Royale app, or follow at esports royale EN on Twitter for information on the couple of upcoming final golden ticket qualifier events for Clash Royale League, and maybe you'll find yourself against Mo and prove that you can beat the man who has won $250,000 plus pretty much every championship in this 2022 season.
Mohammed Light going with Lava Hound. We'll see what he wants to pair that with. There's the Miner coming out as we see Skeleton King bottom of your screen. Miner to the back. Golden Knight going to get turned around. Flying Machine not going to get on tower yet, but there it is. Already, this is looking real bad. Pup's tanking for the Flying Machine. Flying Machine still not even touched yet. That's a tower down early.
Ozlon just said, everyone, dinner's on me tonight, as Mohammed Light takes game number 1. My word, you saw Z Fireball not in cycle. Mo goes, oh, so that means you have no way to stop a Flying Machine? GG, well played. And man, you're there with no Elixir and no Fireball in that situation. At that point, I mean, I respect that Z is still playing, but my word, that's brutal.
Yeah, you're in an uphill battle against the best in the world, who's already taken a tower and has the exact same elixir that you do, considering a Brawler's on the board and a Skeleton King, as the Skeleton King starts to stack those souls. And this is a very tough game number 1 here for Z. And this is what you got to get used to, man. When you're playing at this level, you have to know you're going to run into very, very bad starts in single elimination brackets, and you got to be able to come back in games 2 and games 3.
And Skeleton Dragons, courtesy of the arrows, get their own free trip to the right-hand tower. And
there it is.
Yeah, there's the white flag here. Z knows it's over. Man, again, you're sitting there you're looking at how the fates shook out for you, and you're just going, why, oh why, did I have to be on the same side of the bracket as this guy? So we'll go ahead and see if Z can come back in game number 2, but you have to imagine that he's feeling pretty defeated right now.
You know, we've done this for a very long time together, and even before that, whether it was an MMA or comedy, we don't really find ourselves without words that often in our lives, man. But I'd say for competitions in a row, Split 2 specifically, and today, Mohammed Light has left us speechless and has left his opponents dumbfounded and stunned, as that tower take early in that game was already, what was it, within the first minute? And the game was already sewn up. And like you said, the confidence blow to Z. How do you bounce back knowing that you have to win 2 against Mo back-to-back? And almost no one has been able to do that.
Yeah, that's a pretty short list overall. And more importantly, you're talking about, is Mo going to make a mistake? And you look at the replay, right? Fireball, you can see, was the first card played. So he can't get back around to it again. And at that point, it's just, okay, well, I guess my tower is going to be dead. He could have played the Fireball on that, but to save the rest of the tower, but you would have been in a massive elixir hole. And at that point, Z was like, well, there's a rock, there's a hard place, and there's a spike trap full of already spent skulls of former explorers. What do I do here? Let me just Fireball his King Tower and reset.
You know, it's an interesting call, though, right? The Fireball, I'm assuming, came out on the tombstone that was played by Mohammed Light. It just doesn't feel... When you're playing against the best in the world, do you really want to use your big spell on a tombstone? Or do you really, even if it wasn't on a tombstone, do you really want to use your big spell as your first card played? And I think the answer is almost always going to be no, unless they give you an insane amount of value. But then again, you got to think about the respect of who you're playing. Mo knows you're probably using one of the best big spells in the game. He knows exactly what he's doing. He probably doesn't think he's going to bait out a spell, but he's still going to play it slow and see what happens. That spell coming out early just made that an easy decision for almost anyone in the game. That would have been easy for you and me if a Fireball was the first card played.
Here is our official That Aged Well tweet of the day. SwagBuddy15 saying, here we go, Mo gonna choke. And as one might say, that aged well, didn't it?
I mean, you want to be the person that wins the lottery when it's 1,000,000 to 1 odds, right?
Yeah,
And you shot your shot, my friend. But that tweet has not aged well, as Mohammed Light has been untouchable today. Morton was able to take a game off of him in his first set. Z now looking to take 2 back-to-back games off of Mohammed Light. And of course, Ozlon just sitting, waiting, hoping that Z's phone breaks, blows up, he disconnects, whatever horrible thing can happen to his device so that he gets a golden ticket. Because just to remind you guys, in case you haven't heard us say it for the last few months, Mohammed Light already has 2 golden tickets in hand.
Here we go. Game number 2, and Mo looking like maybe he's going heavy in this one. Magic Archer behind the Golden Knight, and that's a lot of value early on. Mo gonna have to contend with the Recruit plus Dark Prince. Barb Barrel more than up to the task.
And somehow Mohammed Light comes out with a few hundred damage and the Elixir lead. And Z has to just sit there and reset once again, not let that get to his head as he sends in a miner. Goes to the inside, good play there. E-Giant comes down here for Mohammed Light.
And I'm not understanding the miner to the inside when you know you're against Magic Archer, so NATO's almost guaranteed to be there. Between the Fireball in game number 1 and the miner to the inside in game number 2, I'm really some suspect decisions from Z here in the early moments in both of these matches.
And those are kind of suspect decisions at any level, right? And we talked a lot in Split 2 about respecting your opponents. And, you know, it feels like some of the plays early here from Z have been maybe fueled by nerves more than composure.
So, Mohammed Light, E-Giant, Magic Archer, NATO against Miner Control, and again, going to get some nice geometry. And I saw someone in the Twitch chat asking earlier what makes Mo so good. Talked about this earlier. Number 1 is nearly the most mistake-free Clash Royale played in the game, right? The lowest mistake rate of anyone who plays this game. And you see that there. So many players might not quite get that Magic Archer placement right. Mo, there's no question about it. And yeah, Rocket cycled onto the E-Giant into this left-hand lane. And then the other part of it is recognizing early on what he has to do to win. Best recognition, best quick recognition of the game out of the Pharaoh, and more Magic Archer lineup there just a tad as we get into the final 30 of Double Elixir.
I was going to say, man, I actually truly believe that rocket could have just been the nail in the coffin. You see the Inferno Tower going to get a little bit of value here, but the Golden Knight put it on skates. Now that Royal Delivery comes in very late. Magic Archer behind here getting that tank for by the Baby Dragon. NATO comes in, and I don't know. I don't know, man. It just feels like... I mean, he's the best in the world for a reason, but you also got to play against him like he's like one of your most important ladder matches. You don't know that they're the best in the world. You shouldn't be making plays like that early on. They're too aggressive, and Mohammed Light is going to capitalize off them every single time.
I think that you just kind of hit a big point there, Andrew, is how many players make desperation choices early against Mo because they're worried about what's going to happen over the next 3 to 5 minutes. Right, and I think we just saw 2 of those out of Z in this matchup. 2 choices that I honestly doubt he would have made against a different player. He made them here feeling like he had to force it, and you know, you end up not playing your best Clash Royale when you have to. And hey, congratulations, Ozlon, who will be going to Clash Royale League World Finals, and now he gets to play one more matchup against Mohammed Light to see whether Mohammed Light adds to his golden ticket collection and the people who thank him for trips to World Finals, or whether Ozlon can take $4,000 and the golden ticket with no asterisks attached to it.
Now, I think this is going to be a fascinating final set of our day because both of these guys technically playing with nothing to lose. Mohammed Light, yes, he wants a 3rd ticket. Yes, he wants $4,000 instead of 2, but they're both going to World Finals. This is a for fun set, for bragging rights set, and we saw what happened last time that these 2 guys played against each other, which is what happens a lot of times when people play Mohammed Light, is Ozlon got 2-0'd. As we check in here with a quick highlight of this last game, I mean, it was highlights for one player and lowlights for the other.
Yeah, I mean, this early Magic Archer damage, and then you get in, you had the weird, I guess we're past the King Tower activation, but the strange early miner to the inside. You know, this is one of those ones where I wonder if if Z, again, makes different decisions, if he's not up against Mohammed Light, and here we go, see the end, and Mo just goes, Mo's covering his mouth like he's surprised or shocked that he won here. You know, I don't play this matchup very often. I don't play much in the way of Miner Cycle. The Miner early definitely wasn't it. The rocket to that left-hand tower certainly wasn't it as well. GG, well played. Mohammed Light, can Ozlon stop him, or is the headline once again, Mo continues to mow?
I mean, honestly, man, you look at this. Look at how much it costs for Mo to get around. Look at how much more expensive it is. We have an Inferno Tower. We have a rocket. We have a Dark Prince. We have ways to distract the Golden Knight dash. You can get on top of that Magic Archer with that Royal Delivery. I actually don't think this is a bad matchup for Z. I think he just played it incredibly poorly, probably, excuse me, because of nerves. That's at least my opinion.
Yeah, it's certainly something we've been talking about today, that you make different decisions. You can't play differently because you're playing against someone different, right? You have to play the game you normally play, and you know, that's one of the things that we're continuing to see hurting people here. So congratulations to Mohammed Light for yet another final. Congratulations, Quentin. Congratulations, Ozlon, for your guaranteed golden ticket. And now we'll go ahead and we'll find out fairly soon who's taking home that extra 2K.
That's right. 2-2-0s here in our semifinals. Both players in our grand finals are going to be going to world finals, and we got to give them just a little bit of time to reset their decks, recollect. And like we said, this is going to be a lot of fun for both of these guys. Nothing really to lose, only money to gain. Both going to world finals, and Ozlon going to be making an appearance at our $1 Million World Finals. Exciting for him. Congratulations to him and Turkey. We're going to take a quick break, and we're going to come back and right now and see if Mohammed Light can get that third golden ticket or not.
The Snapdragon Pro Series is brought to you by Snapdragon Elite Gaming, Monster Energy, and DHL.
And here we go, the grand final of our Snapdragon Pro Series Golden Ticket bracket. I'm Rich Slayton, that's Andrew Guy, and if you're just joining us, the Golden Ticket officially already assigned as Mohammed Light has already won his, so Ozlon guaranteed that trip. The question now is, does Mohammed Light win his figurative third Golden Ticket plus that $4,000, or does Ozlon get the upset here and double his prize money at this late stage?
Yeah, you know, it's a funny moment because we do have to shout out our sponsors. Well, I mean, they didn't tell us we did, but I'm going to in Snapdragon Elite Gaming. When winning matters, think Snapdragon. Winning doesn't matter right now. That's what the most interesting thing is about this grand finals. And when we look at our head-to-head between Mo and Ozlon, $2,000. That's all that's up for grabs, but we all know how badly these guys want to go to World Finals. Morton, not there yet. Viper, not there yet. All the other competitors in this competition who we had big names. There was Schwatzen, there was Michifu, there was Ruben. That is all by the wayside because both of these guys will be at our World Finals, but can Ozlon pick up a bragging rights win, right? Last time they met, it was a 2-0 victory for Mo. Mo has only dropped one game today on his path to victory, and Ozlon probably hoping he can give him 2 more.
Yeah, sure, most surely he's hoping for that. But again, and I'm talking about it on Twitter right now with a couple of people in the community, and there's some conversation in Twitch chat as well. You know, it's one of those things where the anticlimactic nature of this final, right? With Ozlon already having guaranteed his golden ticket, and this is kind of like this match is almost. It's for $2,000, which is no small chunk of change, but the importance is significantly reduced. But how do you predict this? How do you predict when the best players in the world are usually winning a 70% clip? Even Mo last year, I believe, only won one of the 8 monthly qualifiers, right?
Right.
How do you come into 2021? And Mo also didn't win World Finals, right? You think about that there are other people were winning things last year. How do you predict that someone has such a stranglehold on competitive? And so you talk about, oh, these golden ticket finals. This is now another one where it's anticlimactic. This is just unprecedented. And no matter how experienced you are in Clash Royale, the idea that someone could be winning this consistently at with this level of competition, it shouldn't be happening statistically, but somehow Mo's that good.
Yeah, I mean, the coolest part about it is that history is being made in the Clash Royale scene, and we're getting to watch every step of the way, right? Yep. We always talk about comparing him to the Michael Jordans of basketball, right? Because when you watched his ascent to greatness and him staying at the top, that's a thing that you really only get to see maybe once in your whole lifetime. Now, Clash Royale is only 6 years old, but we have found that guy that really has exceeded and surpassed expectations. You don't... Watching him lose now is almost shocking, whereas there was never really a moment there with anyone else, right? Especially when it was in the teams format with people like Ruben or people like Surgical Goblin. It was like, yeah, they may or may not win their set, but I bet you they'll bounce back in King of the Hill. I bet you they'll bounce back in the 2v2. It's never really been the way of just one person dominating everything, and Mohammed Light is doing that again. So if you're Ozlon, I think, yes, this set does not matter, but what does matter is getting practice against the GOAT. How can you make yourself better? Playing against him. And I think that's one thing we saw when our producers went to the player cams to just kind of check in on them before this set as we are waiting for the invite. Ozlon looked like he was dialed in. He was typing, you know, pretty rapidly. I don't know if he was talking to his analyst or maybe some friends. Mohammed Light doing what he always does, just kind of smiling, you know, playing with his phone a little bit, probably talking in his headset to Jebas, going, yeah, here we are once again, my friend. 3 golden tickets in a few months, no problem.
Yeah, it's just wild. It's, you know, I'm seeing people, every time anyone ever, I think people are done doubting him. The only people who ever doubt him in conversation and in chat, whatever it might be, people who really just don't know or who are shooting the moon and hoping they look smart on the back end. Yeah. So he might not win this best of 3. You don't know. It is a best of 3. Anything can happen, but we already know that we're in a rare era that I don't think whenever Mo does hang up his phone that we'll ever see anything like this again.
Yeah, it would be surprising. So here we go, our grand finals of the Snapdragon Pro Series, Europe, Middle East, North Africa, between Ozlon, top of your screen, and Mohammed Light at the bottom. Both of them going to be at World Finals. And a bit of a fun note here from our producers. We were actually waiting on Ozlon to decide his deck. Mohammed Light is kind of known for taking a little bit longer as he cares so much about this duel mode, especially in best of threes. So maybe there is just a little bit of nerves coming out from Ozlon, who put up the shaking head goblin just a second ago.
And that's going to be, nope. Nice little high E-Spirit, keeps the Archer Queen on the board. Does Mo with this advantage? And yes, he does. Royal Giant in front. And he was behind. And look at this. Ozlon going with I'm suspecting, no, maybe it's not. The question is going to be, what's the pair for this Ram Rider? Typically, in the past, it was Mega Knight. P.E.K.K.A.'s been more popular. You've seen E-Barbs mixed in a bit. Very curious. Ozlon shaking things up here with a Ram Rider and taking the lead early.
Yeah, Ram Rider got that last second connection there, and I think the shaky head was because of the Fisherman coming out with the log already in play. Ozlon was thinking, how on earth are they going to get that Ram Rider on tower? Well, he did it early, and he did it to great success. Now it's all about, can he replicate that as this game moves on?
And Ghost gets on the left-hand tower. Mo gonna eat the damage, sets up Giant Skeleton into the lower lane. As we are now just 13 seconds away from double elixir.
I was going to say, we'll see if a big spell comes down. Big spell, though, is Earthquake, so Log will clean up that Mother Witch, and a pretty healthy Giant Skeleton still on the board.
Here we go. Double elixir time. Giant Skeleton will take care of the E-Wiz, and now Ram Rider set up deep on the right-hand side. Will he try to predict the Fisherman or take the Fisherman off? That's lightning bait there on the left-hand side. Do we see one? And no, again, I realize that Poison was the third card played, so my brain is broken right now.
It's early for us over on the West Coast, or at least it was when we started. P.E.K.K.A. comes down, and now we're seeing more and more reasons why Ozlon had the shaking head. The Fisherman is just getting an incredible amount of value. The E-Spirit plus the log, coupled with that Hunter, or the synergy with the Hunter, I should say. It's just really, really tough stuff. Mo gonna take this tower very easily here. So that means Ozlon needs to make something really special happen, and he needs to do it right now. But that Giant Skeleton is always gonna put that fire out immediately.
And Mo throwing up the good game here. He's going to go ahead and EQ that right-hand side. GG, well played. And we are one game away, potentially, from crowning a Snapdragon Pro Series champion, super champion here. And we'll see if that's going to be one game or if it's going to be two. But, man, that was, yeah, you saw. And here's what we talk about, recognizing the macro. It was Ozlon recognizing very early that he was going to be in for a world of hurt.
Yeah, you talk about all the ways to get the P.E.K.K.A. off of the Royal Giant, the damage on the tower, even being able to clean up a Mother Witch without a Fireball, right? The Earthquake plus the log, no problem. And then the ability to keep that Ram Rider controlled, whether it's with the log, the Electro Spirit, the Fisherman, whatever you want, all good for Mo. And you know, it's funny. We say it every single time we get to the end of one of these competitions. There's just not a lot of words sometimes for how perfect the gameplay is. And once again, the deck selection here is excellent. Now, I can't imagine he was expecting P.E.K.K.A. Ram Rider out of Ozlon, but he sure had a great matchup for it once again.
Yeah, and you see just the control in the middle, Fisherman staying alive, Royal Giant gets down, and no P.E.K.K.A. around to solve that problem. GG, well played. Here we go to game number 2, and you see the little, like, grimace there out of Mohammed Light. Curious about what that was all about. Either way, he has match point.
I just love how serious he's still taking it, right? You can see how dialed in he is. You know, you were even saying at the end of the previous set, like, Mo putting his hands up to his face like he's relieved or looking like he was nervous for a second. It just shows how much he cares, and that's excellence. That's greatness. Even when you're at the top, and even when you don't need to be, he literally does not need to be here today at all. He doesn't need the money. He doesn't need the ticket. He's just here to get better and better and to keep asserting his dominance and flexing that he has the reign over the competitive Clash Royale scene as of 2022 and most of 2021. Against Ozlon is in a spot where he has to go 2-0 against the guy that we've never seen him beat in a competitive scene. in the
yeah, and
competitive scene.
that's the big one, right? Is having to go 2-0, go with those back-to-back, because even if you win game number 2, now we're talking about the amount of information that the best deck-picking team in the business has for game number 3. So the uphill battle there is very difficult. Either way, though, you know, he'll be celebrating tonight as Ozlon will be joining Mohammed Light, Mugi, and Samuel Basoto, rarefied air there for our Clash Royale League World Championship. And of course, that's only 4 of the total 16 spots, so 12 still available. There are 2 more competitions announced already for golden tickets. You can find more about that at Esports Royale EN on Twitter, or go into your esports tab inside of the Clash Royale app. And then, of course, some more spots as well for World Finals coming up starting in the month of August. So if you want to get in, don't worry, you still have your shot, even though it may seem like Mo is taking all of them.
Yeah, it is the era of everyone. Anyone can still qualify. And yeah, like you talk about, that is really exciting for Ozlon when you talk about the rarefied air of the other competition around him. In Mugi, in Basoto, and of course in Mohammed Light. That's how you get people to talk about you as that next great player, as the changing of the guard, right? Mugi and Samuel Basoto and Mo, we weren't talking about them a few years ago, at least especially not like we do now. And this could be the moment for Ozlon to maybe set himself up for that conversation in a year or 2 down the line.
You know, I'm getting ready for our next competition for a golden ticket, the Clash All-Stars event, currently ongoing for the Americas, North America and Latin America. And I saw someone early on ask, well, why is this just for North America, Latin America? And I answered the only way I could, which was just so that Mo can't win all the golden tickets.
Even though he will keep trying.
Yeah, he just decides to move to Argentina for a couple of months so that he can take that one too.
Why not? He's got the cash.
Mohammed Light playing Mortar Miner with the Mighty Miner, so Mortar double Miner here out of Mo Light. A nice
Pick
catch
up there with the guards, yeah.
Yes, sir. So minute 15 away and pretty close, 29.94 to 29.36.
And this does feel like maybe one of the better opportunities for Ozlon to pick up a win. We know how good he is with Mortar control. Mortar playing against Mortar in mirror matchups can always be really frustrating, and a lot of time it just comes down to a Mortar connection and, of course, miners getting on tower and whether they're caught or not. And in terms of catching miners, those guards are going to do a really, really great job.
This is a lot on the board here. Well defended by Ozlon. Gets the miner, although the miner chip does come in and take the lead from Mohammed Light, 26.02. The number on the right-hand side. Mo going to eat the damage on the right and deal with AQ on the left. Does she get the ability off? She does not, despite the log support. And now Mo goes on the offensive with his mortar.
I was just going to say, it was a nice predictive log there to look for those guards, but just did not get what he wanted, being able to get that Archer Queen ability off. And then this Fire Spirit is a great little kite to make sure this Mortar wins the Mortar versus Mortar battle. As a miner goes to the opposite lane, guards do not catch this time.
Yeah, Mo going to the back this time around, not getting it. 33 seconds left in regulation time. And, you know, I saw Jeebus.
Ability.
Oh, yeah, really, very, very nice indeed, and that will take care of the Archer Queen. I think I don't remember where I saw this. I saw this in the last 15 minutes, someone talking about Jeebus saying that one of the things that really makes Mohammed Light great is early pressure in both lanes, pretty much no matter what deck he's playing. So keep an eye on that even though most of Mo's damage is coming in on the right-hand side, he has still been heavily pressuring that left-hand lane as well.
He's always been so good at capitalizing off of counter pushes, right? Anytime he plays a defense, if there's anything alive at all, he always likes to turn it back into offense. And that's, again, a great recognition of Cycle and, of course, Elixir, because sometimes you'll do that. You'll try to turn a defense into offense, and you'll overspend, and all of a sudden you're in a lot of trouble. And Mohammed Light always likes to take that and run with it, as his miner damage has just been brutal. 1408 to 2472. With 90 seconds remaining, and this already feels sewn up. I've been in this situation before in Mortar Mirror matchups, and Mohammed Light needs to make some glaring mistakes to lose this game.
And goes Miner to the back on the right-hand side. Going to get that tower down nice and low. Mighty Miner, real beefy. Going to hold on nicely here. And just a little, look at that cheeky little use of the ability. just to get the bomb on the board, just to reset, make sure he locks down that left-hand defense. Very nice use of the ability there.
And now with only 1 minute remaining, Ozlon needs to make up for 1,200 damage deficit with just minor chip because he has not been able to get a mortar on tower, and he has not been able to get an archer queen on tower. And once again, mortar going to get tanked for by the musketeer and then by the mortar of Mohammed Light as a poison miner comes in. And hey man, that's golden ticket number 3 for the Prince of Egypt, the Pharaoh, the golden chaired golden boy, the goat, whatever you want to call him. He's the best.
Osiris. I mean, at this, yeah, it's just crazy. It really is just crazy. And, you know, everyone's like, look what he did last year. Last year, he didn't win every championship. Last year, it was Lucas who went back-to-back doing with those monthly finals. Mo was the best player in the game last year, without question. If you think 2022 isn't, if you think he isn't different, if he isn't even better here in 2022 than he was in 2021, I think that's a pretty false evaluation. Mo, we're seeing a guy who was already the best, peaking beyond that best.
Yeah, I think you're not paying close enough attention. I think you're not watching if that's the case. So what an interesting run here for Mohammed Light. In the first split of the Snapdragon Pro Series, he was eliminated early on by Morton. We saw what happens here in split number 2. He goes all the way to the end. I think he only lost 1 game along the way. And then when we get to our championship of the top 4 of both of those first splits, again, Mohammed Light, I think he lost 1 game today to Morton early on. That's it. Otherwise, absolute domination, absolute perfection. Rich, I'm running out of metaphors. I'm running out of adjectives to describe this kid.
It's almost like we're living in a simulation, and whoever's controlling it is just making him win enough to see at what point everyone else just uninstalls the game, right? I feel like someone's messing with us at this point with how much Mohammed Light is winning. Now, remember, last year it felt like World Finals was just his to take, and it ended up happening. He ended up in the lower bracket. He lost early. He lost twice at World Finals. Keep that in mind. Ended up in the lower bracket and then ended up losing to Mookie. So we know that it's not a guarantee for World Finals, but what we do have is Ozlon winning a golden ticket, which is probably, you know, we talk about Mo. This is the bigger story. Turkey sending someone to World Finals. Ozlon, who has been playing for Turkey consistently in world competitions, and a big part of why they've been competitive, specifically in World Royale League, now getting the biggest stage we'll ever see him on for World Finals this year.
Yeah, and I think what Ozlon needs to do with this moment is recognize that he is already a massive underdog, even though he is one of the first 4 golden ticket holders. You look at someone like Samuel Basoto, who has not shown up in competition really much at all since winning that first golden ticket, and it doesn't make me as nervous for someone like him. Now, do I think that that's the correct thing to do? Probably not, but he's still playing. I still see his posts. I still see him pushing ladder in global tournaments. But if I'm Ozlon, I grind. I grind for the next few months. I grind until World Finals, because those guys that you're with, they are of a different class still. Now, I know Ozlon might not like me saying that, but I have watched him a lot over the last 18 months. And I do believe when you look at Moogie, Basoto, and Mo, Ozlon is just a step below. So I think he's just got to work to get to World Finals, and then maybe he could impress, surprise, and dethrone the greats.
Yeah, and that's the big one, right? Every win at World Finals, the stakes get higher and higher. The chances get higher and higher. So, you know, it's one of those things where he has plenty of time to prepare, right? It's the end of June at the moment. You have July, you have August, you have most of September. You have time to get ready for it. So as you said, get on the grind, get in the gym, and treat this game differently than you ever have before.
Yep, and as we look at the cleanup here from Mohammed Light, once again, hands on the face as he loves to win, and he continues to do it. It was a mortar, miner, somewhat mirror matchup. Obviously, a lot of cards out there, but it's really all about the control. 2 different champions, 2 different big spells, 2 different small spells, but it was just about minor chip damage, and that's what Mohammed Light did, and he did that by completely controlling the mortar of Ozlon with his own defensive mortars, with kiting with fire spirits, having musketeers up high, and honestly, when we talk about that mighty miner being used now in a few weeks of competition, it really does feel like the mighty miner is the best
with Mohammed Light. He seems to be great with the ability. He doesn't use it when he doesn't want it. You talked about that nice cheeky one earlier on, or I should say later on in that set, with just moving 2 tiles over to give the bomb on top of that Dark Prince. And, you know, it was just tough stuff. We saw Ozlon go for more offensive miners than Mo did, whereas Mo just went, all right, I'll just defend with my mortar, no problem, and I'll just miner on top of tower over and over and over.
Looking at Ozlon, a guy who's got multiple top 100 finishes on ladder, who does have a global tournament championship as well. So Ozlon's certainly capable. But the question is, what do you do between now and September to change capable into competitive, right? How do you make yourself ready for there? And he's got the time. The question is, can he find that match? Let's look at the bracket one more time and take a look at the journey for these two players as we got all the way to this stage, to this moment. And it was Ozlon going through Entourage, and then a nice, just clean, maybe the performance of the day for him over Viper, a clean 2-0. But on the other side, Morton and Mohammed Light. Game number 2 of that, one of those ones you want to go back and watch again and again. And then Z finding himself just outmatched, maybe by the moment more than anything else against Mo. And then, of course, Mo taking the 2-0 here in our final.
And that's got to be such a frustrating semifinals for Viper, because he is looking at what happened. He's looking at what happened in the grand finals. He's looking at what happened to Quentin, and he now knows that he would be holding that golden ticket if he could have just had a better set against Ozlon. But against Ozlon did a great job picking those decks, playing through those matchups, and absolutely dominating today. Even though he ends up with the goose egg in the golden finals, he does walk away with the golden goose in that golden ticket. Mohammed Light doesn't look like he'll be joining us for an interview today, but I'm going to say it right now, Mo. I'm going to get one. I'm going to get an interview from you one day, and I hope it's going to be at World Finals, because I know you're going to keep dodging me, but one of these days I'm just going to show up outside your house in Egypt with a camera and a microphone. I'm going to get that interview, brother. Congratulations once again on a 3rd golden ticket and a 2nd golden ticket given away, Rich. I'm so happy that we're still casting in this era of greatness.
Yeah, this is a lot of fun. At some point, I just want to see Mo play against Mo, right? Like, ask him, who do you want to see next? My clone, to quote Anderson Silva. So maybe some scientists could get that one going. Either way, that's it for today. For everyone who's been watching for this Snapdragon Pro Series, for the long journey to get here, thank you so much for being a part of it. Of course, you're the ones who make this great. Shout out to Phil and everyone else in the booth here to help make this production happen and bring it to you. For everyone on board, I'm Rich Slayton. That's Andrew Guy. We'll see you next time to see if someone can take away Mo's golden tickets.
Tell me who you see when you look straight up like, wait, who? Us now. What you gon' do when we pull up on you like, ooh, touchdown. You already know what it is when I come through you. Ooh, shut down. Say, ooh, shut down. Say, ooh, what now? Tell me who you see when you look straight up like, wait, who? Us now. What you gon' do when we pull up on you like, ooh, touchdown. You already know what it is when we come through you. Ooh, shut down. Ooh, shut down. Ooh, give me that crown. I need that now, right now. Ooh, don't make a sound. It's my time. You hear the crowd. Hey, we need that rain. Me and my team. Deja vu. This here a dream. We done all seen 100 times over back when we was just teens. Now we going dumb. Told them we the one. They would count us out. Now we counting up the funds. Now without a doubt, they be throwing other ones. Like they was always rapping. Yeah, believe them if you want. Now they show love. Came with a dub. It is what it is. It isn't what it was. They all love to hate when it don't work out. Tell you that they always been down when it does. Look. Say, ooh, what now? Tell me who you see when you look straight up. Like, wait, who? Us now. What you gonna do when we pull up on